dimensional world which you inhabit can be bent to your will only when you enter the fifth dimension.
Who do we have in the house today? Who do we have ripping with us in the fifth dimension? None other than Nick Rosé. Nick Rose, known as Nicolas Chocolat, writer, journalist, rock and roller, stellar guitar player, drummer. He can do piano player. The guy is he can do it all. There's a word that they use for someone who can speak many languages or play many instruments. There's a specific word.
Polymath?
Polymath. We have in our presence a polymath, and the fact that you came up with that so quick is the reason that I'm excited that we're doing this podcast, my friend. So welcome to the MISCHO podcast.
Hey, Mish.
Hey,
how are you?
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
I haven't seen you in a long time. Well, no, I've seen you in passing. I see your car sometimes.
Our car.
No, it's your car.
It
is your car. It was once in my possession, now in your possession. And in this slice of bread of life, I guess it's our car.
Yeah.
But at this juncture, is that a word? Is that the right word?
Yeah. Junction.
Junction.
I think my brother corrected you on exactly the same.
It's the same thing? No, because a junction is like...
Yeah, I think it is juncture.
Juncture is like this stage or this phase, regardless of it.
I'm no polymath.
Very weird, though. Is it because like our particular genes are interacting and yours and your brother's are so close that the same exact word comes up?
I don't know.
Because I had the same...
I'm pretty sure it was that same word that you guys were in. I don't even know anymore which
when Uncle Bob was on, same thing happened.
What?
No. Okay, no. Look, I'm just going on the genes thing, but I think...
he doesn't know those words.
Yeah. No, he just looked away. No, he's a brilliant man. All right, so Nick Rose, I'd like you to introduce yourself to the Galactic Federation of Time Travelers, the trillions of listeners out there in the Federation. Yeah. And tell them, what do you do? Who are you? How do we know each other? Just say whatever the fuck you want to say.
Okay. To you or to the...
To both of us. Like, I call anyone listening, it's third-party vibes. You're talking to me, you're talking to them.
Well, so I'm Nick Rose, friend of Misha's, writer, journalist type, and that's...
Well, and you're in a band?
I'm in a band called Technicolor Dreamers. I play the drums. That's a lot of fun. We used to be in a band together.
Yes, back in the day.
Vista Cruiser.
That was when you were, I would say, wilder than I was. And then I went to a point where I was wilder than you.
We crossed, but there was an intersection where we were both equally wild. You know, it was like an X.
Yeah, but that was post-band.
Yeah.
That was post-band. And then we found ourselves like in equilibrium.
Yeah, now
we're kind of past that.
Yeah,
I still I have moments here and there, but for the most part, that old dog is buried.
That's like 15 years ago, right?
Yeah,
like that was John Abbott days. We were, I think Mike Mangione introduced us.
Yeah, he's like, yo, I know this guy. He's an amazing guitar player, and
you put me on bass.
That's the saddest fucking thing ever. It's like, well, I'm playing guitar, and we have a guitar player, and it's almost like. What's that movie, Spinal Tap, where the drummer keeps disappearing? That was our situation with bass players.
Who was the first bass player? Was it me?
No. Yes, it was you.
Yeah.
It was my brother, actually. Then he went to drums.
Okay.
And then we got you. And then we got this guy named Jason Winterbotham.
Yeah.
It was such a legendary rock
Jason
and roll.
Newsted.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we kind of treated him like that. Then Brandon Harrar.
Oh, that's right. Brandon took over.
Yeah. And
I think you had Alex.
Briefly.
You had some real characters in the band.
Like, honestly, anyone I could get. And yeah, it was so sad because we put you on bass. And you were by far just the best musician out of all of us at every instrument. But you played the bass. And
I was happy. Bass is really fun too. I was happy to play the bass.
Yeah, and it was a short stint.
It was a short stint.
This wasn't years, you know?
No.
It was.
Wasn't living in the house much back then.
But the revolving door of bass players actually helped my songwriting. And I'll tell you why. And I haven't really thought about this in a while. But the fact that we had such a revolving door of bass players made me purposely write songs that were simple. Because it's like, I know in 3 to 4 weeks we'll have to change our bass player again. So I need to make all the songs just one chord progression. And that actually led to much more concise, solid songwriting. I could focus on melody and lyrics in lieu of shredding and solos and tempo changes and, key changes and all that shit.
Was it weird for your brother to always have like the rhythm section always changing? Or he just
honestly, I don't even think he noticed the bass players changed.
Okay.
We were in a different vibe back then.
He had the 2 belts on.
He was ripping. He was ripping back then. But
double bass drum, double belt.
Yeah. Double bass. Yeah, he double everything.
Yeah.
Double everything. Double color hair, everything. So you're a writer, journalist. I would like you to explain, because I like to know, and whenever I have people on the podcast, it's like I know them and I know them well. But hearing the step-by-step process of how things happened is very interesting to me. So what led you into this world?
So I stumbled into it for sure. I never, oh, cool. Coaster. I never planned on becoming a journalist. I'd never, it was never a goal I had set. It was never an aspiration I had, but I was on my way to becoming a lawyer. I had gotten a law degree, and then I was in bar school, writing the Quebec bar exam, which is a really grueling, situation, and it completely drained me. But I wrote it once, failed it, and then I wrote the retake, and then I failed that, and then I went to Paris for a few months, and it was just kind of recalibrated. And when I got back. Well, while I was in bar school, I'd met an editor from Vice, Raf Katig, really, really nice guy. And we were just talking. He was asking me what, my background. And I was saying, well, I always worked in criminal law. That was always my field of interest. My father's a criminal lawyer. But it's a really, really highly stimulating area of law. So, I was talking to this Vice editor, and he was asking me kind of my take on certain big cases back then. And, I was a fan of Vice for sure. And, I think for whatever reason, he thought what I was saying lined up with their kind of editorial vibe. So he said, hey, man, he goes, you should send in an article sometime or a pitch. Like, we need more like crime stuff. I was like, wow. I remember going home that night and being like, that's crazy. Like, I was just at this. It's actually an Uncle Bob story too. Like, we went to Chuck Hughes, such a Montreal thing. Chuck Hughes was releasing a Vans signature shoe. Only in Montreal does a chef get like a signature shoe from Vans, and it was being held at the Phi Center. And then Bob sees a guy, this Filipino guy. He goes, "Hey, Ricky," and Ricky goes, "It's Bob Marriott." Holy shit, I haven't seen you in like 25 years. Like, oh, who's this Ricky guy? So Ricky goes, "Oh, I used to play football, North Shore Lions with your uncle." I remember asking him, being like, because Bob always talks about, he's like Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite. He always talks about what a great football player he is, or skateboarder. Was. Yeah, skateboarder, whatever. And it's always like, okay, Bob. And then I asked Ricky, I go, hey, was Bob like good at football? Or because he's always telling us he was like the best football player ever. And he goes, your uncle was amazing. He was fearless. He was like smart. We were like, wow, okay, Bob is telling me the truth. And then Ricky goes, hey, he goes, I'd like you to meet my brother Raf. And Raf worked at Vice, and testament to Uncle Bob. He immediately, the street smarts that he has, saw I never expressed any desire to get into journalism, but Bob was like, this guy works for Vice, Nick works for criminal, you guys should talk. Like right away he saw like an angle. So after all the bar exam stuff fails, I say I can't go back, spend another year trying to pass a pretty arbitrary multiple choice exam. I decided to contact Raf, who I hadn't seen in a few months, and I wrote a full story. I didn't even pitch it. I'd never written it, so I wrote the thing, sent it into Raf, and he got back to me a half hour later and said, it's going on the site in an hour. Here's what you need to fix. And it was pretty minimal, and I had to fix it. I was like, holy shit, like, this is after a month of trying to find a job after getting back from France and being like, a bank job in a law office, straight jobs, and like no response. Like I sent out like 20, 30 applications, got nothing. I sent an article to Vice, which was really cool back then. And, it was on the website within an hour. I touched a few things up and I was like, never really looked back,
That's amazing though.
It's so crazy. I still pinch myself and be like, if Bob hadn't met this guy he played football with 25 years at the shoe opening thing, I would have gone back to the bar exam and I'd be a lawyer now or something.
That's what I like to attribute the fifth dimension to. The creator of coincidence. All the stuff that we don't understand that in hindsight we say like this completely shifted my trajectory.
Yeah.
Like were that not to happen, like there were so many unknowns for that to happen, but it's so
many things had to line up for that to happen. Like,
and there was
that moment,
and it wasn't even the plan.
No, there's no plan. The plan I thought was to become a lawyer, but it's just so wild how that worked out. But in the moment, like it just felt
right,
really natural and really right, and like it's hard to articulate that feeling. But my mom saw me that night right after, and she said something had changed. She was like, the way I was talking and my vibe, it was like something,
something connected,
something connected big time. And the more bar school was going on, the more I was just like I was drawing a lot, and then I remember I was in a cafe and I'd drawn a portrait of Stanley Kubrick, which is pretty unrecognizable. I'm not very good at drawing, but it was just to deal with the stress of bar school. I think I was just drawing, and this guy comes up to me and goes, "Was that Stanley Kubrick?" I go, "Yeah, cool. Like you recognize it." And he goes, "I'm working on a movie right now." We started talking about Kubrick and film. And he goes, "Oh, I'd love for you to like." He's like, "You have a kind of a weird, interesting face. I'd love for you to be in this movie." So like, there's all these. I was going to a pretty non-artistic field, but all of these things were just happening, and I just felt it was just like. Maybe I should be doing something more expressive signs. Or creative. Yeah, I was getting signs, or at least that's how I felt.
Yeah, and I had no idea that there was the connection of criminal law and your first Vice article. I didn't know that was the connection. I didn't know it was that like
linear.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I ended up covering the first article I wrote was I went on WikiLeaks and I found it was going into the political affiliations of media companies in Quebec. And I was just digging through WikiLeaks articles. But then after that, it was really like, I was covering the Magnata trial. I was in the courtroom with Luca Magnata and, a lot of organized crime stuff.
And if anyone doesn't know that trial, can you explain what that was?
Well, I think everyone knows that trial, but Luca Magnata was...
Yeah, I don't think everyone does.
No, okay, well, he murdered and dismembered a guy who was here from China. It was like a hookup, supposedly, I think a Craigslist hookup. And he brutally killed him, filmed it, and then fled to Germany. And he was arrested in Germany. They brought him back and put on trial for murder. And he was his argument was that he had lost his mind at the time. He didn't know what he was doing, so he shouldn't be treated like a...
Was that Cats documentary?
Yeah. So he's the guy. Before all of this happened, he'd already pissed off a subculture of cat enthusiasts on the internet because he was...
You mean humans?
Yes, cat.
Yeah, this really niche counterculture called people who like cats.
Cat enthusiasts. No, but there was like these forums, right? And he was posting these videos, and guys were trying to figure out who he was, where he was from,
and he was killing cats.
Yeah, he was torturing cats.
That's so.
Yeah, no, it's disgusting. Yeah. And so he was very, very disturbed. This guy, and his old like audition tapes of he was very fucked up. He was kind of a ticking time bomb situation. And it was a huge, sensational case because, he'd filmed it and put it on the internet, the murder, and it was brutal. And, it was like this big media thing. But his parents were there every single day of the trial. The jurors had to be treated for PTSD afterwards because they were looking at all the evidence. So it was really like an intense, trial. And a girl, Vice was just like, Raph was just like, okay, go, the law sort of, so go cover it. So I was just in there and, I'd learned. So criminal law was like definitely the foot in the door, but also in law school, I had learned how to write properly, in a very kind of lean, organized, direct way. And So, which was a huge asset for like writing, online articles, because you just, people's attention spans are pretty short when they're reading online. So.
Of course. Yeah. Rarely do they get past the title.
Yeah. No,
But they always have time to write comments, but they rarely get past the title.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, I'm joking, but and so that the first article was about that case.
There's like 3 or 4 there's like 3 articles. I went multiple times just to cover, the trial itself, the verdict, and then he appealed. I had to go to the Court of Appeals because he was appealing something. He appeared via video conference. Yeah, just that's some really weird looking guy.
Yeah, what was the feeling like in the room, in the courtroom?
It was heavy because like his lawyer was like all over the place, and there was a lot going on within. There was a lot of drama just legally speaking, like between the prosecution and the defense, and the juror. It was just, you could tell everyone was exhausted emotionally, physically. It was just it was a lot, but it was a great place to learn how to write on deadline. Because it's like, okay, file this. Once the verdict is rendered, get a couple of quotes about guilty or no, not guilty, and then we got to have this up as soon as possible. So I was under the gun. And, dealing, also meeting other journalists there, talking to them. There were some really nice journalists who were like, I was like, look, I don't really know what I'm doing here. And they were helpful with navigating the story.
So that was
all that.
Because you submitted your first article, right? Right.
Yeah.
It was just one.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, we need 2 more.
No, I just kept
like, who's giving you these deadlines?
No one. I was giving myself I wasn't even being assigned. I would just write things and send them in. I wouldn't even pitch them because I was like, well, worst case they say no, but I'm still learning how to write an article. So at one point Raph was like, hey man, you can pitch something first before writing a full article. I was like, I know, but I'd rather it's not lost time. I thought, because I was so fresh and I'd never done it before. Like it was.
You were excited about it.
Of course. I was like obsessive about it. Yeah.
Okay, so how did you transition after that? Because you didn't stay in like the criminal scope, did you?
No. I was covering that. I was covering all kinds of shit. But but so what happened is that around the same time,
just the tapping on the table. Just because it's bad for audio.
Oh, it's bad for audio.
Yeah, when there's a big, know.
Okay, I'm rip roaring mad right now. So what then? Well, my brother and I started a little hot sauce company.
Shout out Smoke
Show, Montrose Foods. So I was completely winging it as a freelance journalist. But that was going really well. My relationship with Vice was going really well. And then at the same time, my brother and I were starting to get this mostly my brother, but getting this hot sauce off the ground. And the guys, the editor at Munchies in Toronto, he had just left, and they're like, hey, you have a hot sauce company. You must know a lot about food. I was like, yeah, sure. I know a lot about food. Do you want to be the editor for Munchies? They offered me editor. I ended up becoming staff writer, but like within 4 or 5 months of freelancing, I went from that one article. Yeah, it was like maybe 5 months, and then I was offered a staff gig at Vice, which in 2015 was like, it would be like in the 70s, like you're a writer for like 6 months, and Rolling Stone's like, hey, you want to be a staff writer for us? It was I completely blew my mind that I was like
literally no friction, no barriers to entry to.
That's what was so crazy.
Like the bar, like the law, like.
I was just like swimming upstream, and it was such a struggle.
And then this writing just falls out of nowhere, and just you effortlessly glide into this new domain where it's like, oh yeah, you'd speak to someone who's your uncle's old friend. He says, oh, you criminal law? Like, yeah, okay, send us some stuff. And you never expect anyone to answer your email, right? And they do, and then they want more, and you keep submitting.
Yeah,
and then you start this hot sauce company with your brother, and you meet someone else, and they're like, oh, you must know a lot about food. You want to come on and talk about food? And it's just like, fucking effortless, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like, oh, okay. Like it was just, I could just like exhale and just let it, I just realized you just release and, let the river take me where it wants me to be, It's so much easier to live that way.
It's easier said than done, right? Because you have to have a certain amount of like faith or lack of expectations for that to work.
That's the lack of expectations. I even right now, I don't have any like, super precise goals or ambitions. I'm just working on what I have now as hard as I can. And, with certain faith that, things will continue to unfold and they might not, I don't know, but
they're definitely moving forward.
Yeah.
Like you're
progressing.
They're progressing. You're putting out quality work and you're getting more work after that.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing.
It's amazing.
And I think you're in a field that like really suits your mind, your persona, like your personality, everything. Like I see you more as a writer, as a rocker than a lawyer. But you have the intellect for it. But it doesn't mean that you're just not. I don't see lawyer.
No, and even my dad, who's a lawyer, a couple of years ago, I remember he pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey Nick," he goes, "I was at the courthouse the other day and I was looking at all the young guys, and he's like, I look at you with your hair and what you're doing now. He's like, you keep doing what you're doing. You're very good. You're in the right place. It just feels like I'm in the right place." So
that's really relieving to hear. Like there's I spoke about this with your brother Dave Rose, for all the people.
Frere.
Yeah, Frere, for the people who don't know, but parents and the way they interact with their kids has a huge impact on what they do, how they turn out, and not to say that there's any good or bad way. It's just more of like action reaction. It is what it is. Where did it lead to? And your dad, who was the lawyer, is not saying, "Cut your hair. You don't look like anyone else in the fucking courtroom.
Yeah,
go do it." Whereas like my dad, for example, was like, "Clean fucking shave. Don't fuck around. You're going to fucking sell. You're going to work. Spring break, that's for pussies. You're going on the road. You're going to work. You're going to fucking work."
Oh, Georgie.
Oh, Georgie.
Yeah. Which is his way of expressing his love for you, right? It's like,
of course.
Yeah. My dad was just like a little more laid back about those things. My parents were just always like, as long as our kids are happy, we're happy.
Yeah, that's amazing, because you didn't have this inherent guilt or shame about not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like you felt liberated to do what you were doing.
Yeah.
Right. So
I didn't feel like I was doing something wrong.
Like if anything, like the whole law initiative was more of a burden on yourself, like a stress on yourself, that you said, I have this goal and I have this expectation. Yeah. And like, I'm going to do this, and I studied for this, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And it was great because it taught me a lot about discipline. It made me more rigorous intellectually. It taught me how to write. Like, it taught me, it put me in situations where, was working on trials, organized crime. I remember really early on working on the Colisée, which was at the time the biggest organized crime trial, the biggest organized crime bust ever. It was like, there's like 100 guys or something. So, all of this came in really useful later on. So it wasn't like an unnecessary, it's not like, oh shit, I wasted that time. Like, it was really good, but the end goal, the end game of becoming a lawyer wasn't the right end game, but it was all for the right reason.
Yeah,
but
there was no waste.
But I didn't know what it was, Yeah,
it was all for a reason. It all gave you the skills that you needed to really, kill what you needed to do.
Yeah.
Later on. And that's how I feel about like my journey in business, and let's say the way my dad was. And then when he passed away and I ran that company, it gave me a discipline that I didn't have. It gave me understanding of, financials, and understanding of how a company functions and dealing with people. And it just gave me this whole breadth of skills that when I was in it, I thought I was going to be, running a manufacturing business for the rest of my life. But things change as well. We ended up selling it, and now I'm in the arts as well, and I approach it very much like a business, very much like manufacturing. The way I outsource stuff, the way I set up my supply chain, all that, I couldn't have ever been able to do what I'm doing had it not been for my past experience.
Yeah, most people doing that aren't applying that kind of framework, logistically to whatever creative undertaking. There's like an idea of like, oh, well, I'm in the arts, I can be disorganized. You're coming at it from a very logical.
Yeah, and it's like simple stuff. Like if I say I'm going to be there at 1, I'll be there at 1. You know, it's these very basic things. If I'm going to say that I'm going to hit a deadline, I'll hit the deadline. I'm not going to do everything. I'm going to find the best suppliers and have backup suppliers. And in my word of supplier, it's like freelancers who are doing my editing.
Yeah.
And long story short, we should be grateful and learn to see that there's no waste, that everything gave us they filled our toolbox with what we needed.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, do you stubbornly continue with, down that path, just to prove something to yourself or to other people, or do you kind of take stock, do a moral inventory, as they say in AA, and just say, you know what, crunching the numbers here, this isn't working, and just, there's no harm in just walking away from something that's not working.
Yeah, and that's also much easier said than done, because oftentimes when we're on a path and we have this idea in our heads that like people are expecting us to do what we said we were going to do. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself with the last thing, but I was talking about deadlines and meetings. Because let's say you said, oh, I was going to be I know when I sold the company, all these people came out of the woodwork and said, well, how can you do this? It's your dad's company. You built this. You were doing this. You did it for so many years. And it's like, I didn't really care. But there's always this, like the surrounding, we have this idea that there are people in our surroundings, their ideas of what we should do have some kind of weight. And oftentimes that kind of holds us back. Like we feel guilty that we're not doing what they thought we were going to do when that's meaningless.
Yeah.
Like,
they're just projecting all of their shit onto you.
Yeah, of course. So did you have any of that when you were transitioning?
Not really. If I did, I filtered it out. Like I did, like it's not something I think. Like I think there's some people like, oh, good for you. Yeah, you want to be a writer and start a hot sauce company with your brother. Like when I was, 8 months away from being a lawyer, but I really didn't care. Like it was so much more interesting when what was unfolding in front of me.
And when you went into the writing, it was almost like it was full gear. It went from 0 to 60 real fast, right?
Real fast, yeah. Yeah. Which is great. And it was like, I do everything full gear. Like when I was in bar school, I was full gear and, with like you're the same way.
Yeah. I think that's a very important thing. Is like when you're doing something, fully committing to what you're doing, like fully showing up, because regardless of what you think the outcome might be, the outcome is going to be different. So all you can really do is just not hesitate and just give her all you got.
Yeah, exactly. And not get focused. Don't focus too much on the end game. Just focus on what's tangible and in front of you and what you can do now.
Yeah, like I get lost in that a little bit. In what? Like in the end game. Like, oh, what am I going to do? Like I started this podcast. There's no real end game with the podcast. Yeah. It's just I wanted a reason to connect with people. Yeah.
Well, you've invested a lot into this. On some level, you're probably like, well, I want to, metrics of X amount of views per episode. Like I'm sure on some level, but
I know it's a long game. Yeah. It's a long game where when you're just starting a podcast, you can't expect to have like 1 million downloads per episode. No. So I know full well that this is long game stuff, and I'm just gonna have people on, and I'm not gonna just do this expecting to like my life to change because of it. Yeah. Right. So there's no expectations with this other than showing up and sharing nice conversations.
Yeah, making sure the product is as good as possible. Exactly. Because that's the only thing you have control over anyways. So.
That's the only thing. But like let's say with music, I'm making music, and sometimes I get in my head a little too much about, what's this outcome? Like, how am I going to get it out? How do I get a label to like help me distribute it? How do I do this, that, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, sit back, see how diversified you are. Like don't lose yourself in this shit. Yeah. Do you find yourself sometimes losing it, or are you so focused on like the task at hand that there's no room for that?
There's no room for me personally. No, because it's never served me to have the one time I did really have an end game of like, I want to be a lawyer. It was so far removed from what my, mental idea of what it was going to be that I just realized like, okay, like I just want to, work as hard as I can to make the coolest stuff possible right now.
Yeah.
And then the rest, first of all, doesn't even exist. It's in the future and it'll take care of itself one way or another.
Yeah. And that's where I always bring myself back to.
Yeah.
It's like whatever, I know that I'm giving everything I've got to what I'm doing. And I think that's all I can do. That's all we can really have control of.
Yeah, exactly.
How can we make the best of this very moment? So you were talking about so the food portion of your journey, right? The food writing, and then you went, like you saw the guy who knew you drew Stanley Kubrick
Yeah.
or Kubrick. How do you pronounce it?
I say Kubrick.
Okay,
Kubrick.
cool. Kubrick.
I never saw that guy again, but it was just like a little, like, he was just like a weird guy in a cafe. He was like, he'd show me some short films he had made and stuff. But yeah, he asked me if I wanted to be on cam, and he gave me his phone number.
Well, I got you on camera.
Yeah,
In the machine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, in the machine. Yeah,
You were
and right now.
And
Yeah.
right now, this is the second time.
Yeah, this is the sequel.
All right. So where did you go after the food thing? How long did you do the food? You were what were you? What did you call it?
A staff writer for Munchies.
Yeah, which is amazing gig, right?
Yeah, great gig. I got to eat and drink and write for a living, you know? It was an amazing job.
So you said eat and drink and write for a living.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned AA a little earlier.
Yeah.
So when did things change?
When did things change? About 3 years ago. It was just, I was drinking a lot, and like at the same time, like things were happening at work where it was like, you know, maybe time to leave Munchies. You know, it was like almost 3 years I did food writing, and then, you know, there's opportunities coming up production wise within Vice to work on TV projects. So it was just like completely chaotic point in my life. And then I got really sick. I got a really bad flu. I got like COVID-19 or something. And
I remember that.
yeah. And I was in bed for like 10 or 12 days, like bedridden. Like I couldn't get out of bed for like, so I haven't been sick since that. Like it was just a huge like reset on the immune system. And I was drinking a lot leading up to that. And then, you know, that was like the longest I'd gone in forever without drinking. It was like 10 days or because like nothing was going down. And I just decided, okay, you know, I'll take a month off. And then a month turned into like, you know, 6 months. And things just kept getting better for me personally without the booze. It was like the one thing I removed, and then everything else got better. So, and it keeps getting better.
And you were already on a sweet momentum. And then would you say that when you dropped that bag of bricks that was on your back, like you were able to float it even better?
It was more like, it was like everything like work and personal stuff. It was all like tied into a knot, like really, really tight. And then I just pulled the thread of alcohol out of the knot, and then the whole thing unfurled. And I was like, okay, I could see all the threads separately. You know, it was just way easier to navigate all of those things and to isolate them, where the booze just kind of tangles them all together, and you don't know
where to start,
what's up and what's down. You know what's going on.
So your perspective is lost. Oh, so you're putting that bad boy away.
This bad boy.
Oh, yeah, because you were clicking it earlier.
I know it's a tick. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
not nervous.
It's okay. No, but no, I know you're not nervous. Come on, why you're not nervous? So you quit the drinking. It's been what, 3 years?
Almost 3 years. Yeah. December.
You look amazing. 27. You look alive.
Yeah, my hair. Look at my hair. My hair's gotten a lot nicer since I stopped drinking. And
you always had great hair, but your skin and let's say your glow look.
Thank you.
Look fucking good.
Yeah, you look a hell of a lot better too than when.
Well, I looked like I was 47 years old when I was 25.
You look like Vinnie Paul from Pantera at one point.
Oh yeah, I did.
But he had the big beard,
and the dead eyes. You know, I'm holding a bottle of Jameson. Yeah. Oh man, but that's what the first 30 years or so are for, right? They're for downloading our environment, about learning our limits, seeing the boundaries.
Yeah,
I would encourage going
to
the edge to see what it is, so you know how far you can go.
Yeah, there's always a couple of guys who fall off the edge. You know?
Yeah.
I don't want to name any, but like a couple come to mind. But yeah, no, you just throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall from like 20 to 30, and then
because we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
No, exactly, and then you see what sticks after a decade of
fuckery.
Yeah,
because it's like your parents let you out of the house.
Yeah,
and then you're essentially a 12-year-old, because when you live with your parents, you're not really progressing, right? There's just like this shit attitude because you're suppressed in a way, because you're a teenager and you need to be out and about like our ancestors. And so when we're out of the cage, it's almost like we're children who can do whatever they want and have enough disposable income to make a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or I mean, you don't need any disposable income to make a disaster, but but
Just need a good collection of pirates.
yeah, exactly. You can steal, whatever you need, in the right mindset. So yeah, it was, and then, but what's cool about, once you turn like 30 is just like, you're old enough to like see patterns repeating themselves, but you're young enough to like actually change those things, and be like, okay, well, I see what needs to be removed, and but you're young enough where you're not too caught up in your habits or whatever to
so you can adjust, and it's almost like with every year we can recognize things that aren't serving us a little quicker than we used to.
Yeah.
All right, so nice, clean. Well, other than that pizza and brio that you ate before,
I still eat like a divorced cop, but it's whatever compared to what I used to put in my body. It's really
way better.
Yeah,
way fucking better. So, what are some interesting topics? Because you've told me off the record about all these really interesting people that you've been able to reach out to and like you've communicated with. You even have a burner phone now. All these crazy things. But what is this writing and journalism journey like? What are some really interesting stories or people that you've come across that you're at liberty to discuss?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like two of the most interesting ones I did never got published. One was Norm Macdonald. I spent a couple hours on the phone with Norm, who I remember we used to go to your place and watch Dirty Work.
I watched it last week.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Does it stand up?
It does.
Yeah.
It's you can really feel how like it's like an amazing piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like but
it's not trying to be good either. It's just
it's trying to be what it is. It feels like a movie written by Bob Saget and Norm Macdonald.
And it's just like joke. Like,
yeah,
there's no real structure to it.
Yeah, the transitions of the scenes, like every new scene is a new song, a new pop song from 96 or whatever it was. It like the whole production of it is really poor.
Yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah, no, there's some really.
So what happened with Norm?
So Norm, at the time, he was his talk show. I think it's called Norm Macdonald Has a Talk Show
on Netflix.
Norm Macdonald Has a Show was the name of the show, and it was being released on Netflix. So he was doing like a little media blitz. So at this point, I'd left Munchies. I was freelancing again, but the editors at Vice are really cool about, so basically it was like an excuse to talk to Norm Macdonald, who I'd always admired. And I managed to get on the phone with him a couple of years ago to talk about, talk about the show, but also late night stuff. And then we ended up talking about the October crisis and the FLQ and organized crime. And he was like so smart, like he acts like he's like this dumb guy, dumb chunk of coal, but he's far from it. Like very, very well read. We ended up talking about like Bob Dylan and Nabokov, like literature and stuff. Like it was just a crazy, huge, spanning conversation. That continued a little bit afterwards. He was really cool.
How was his vibe and his like tone of voice when you're talking to him on the phone?
It was like really low, like when he's on Conan, he's like, "Hey, Conan," and it's like kind of more nasally, but he has like a really, when he wasn't like on, he was just like really gravely kind of nice deep voice.
So like Norm sounded more like this.
Yeah, a little like this, like even like raspy a little bit.
Okay,
yeah, like he'd had like
because his persona is, "Hey,
yeah,
what's asking the question, Adam?"
Yeah,
ask the question.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like part of his persona is that voice is like it's a character, you know, like Bob Dylan. People don't realize that Bob Dylan for the last 50 years has been pretending to be Bob Dylan. He's not even a real guy, right? It's not even his real name. I think Norm Macdonald, who's a huge Bob Dylan fan, has taken from that and been like, he just created this guy, on podcasts and talk shows, Saturday Night Live, but he's a way more interesting, intelligent, complex guy than this like one-liner, the guy that does one-liners on talk shows.
Yeah. Okay, so he's much different. But what the hell happened to the episode?
The timing wasn't good because he'd made some statements around that time, and it just became a kind of a hot potato, and so we ended up not running the interview.
Okay,
yeah.
So that was based on your camp saying we don't need to put this out.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't like he called and said, "Oh, yo, shit's
No,
happening."
no. I spoke to him on the phone that one time, and that was it. But interestingly, I remember seeing this picture back in the day before Uncle Bob got sober. He had a picture of himself, Ricky from Trailer Park Boys, and Norm Macdonald on the Paramount lot in LA. And I think Norm's got his arm around Bob and Ricky.
What a crew!
Yeah, and you can tell they'd had like a wild night, you know. And so I sent him the picture, and he goes, "Oh, sure." He goes, "Sure, I remember your uncle." He goes, "I thought he was one of the Trailer Park Boys." So it was just like a, you know, kind of a weird, again, another weird fucking Bob coincidence.
Connected to that interdimensional
Bob's
being.
tapped into some kind of weird energy. Yeah,
he doesn't even know it.
No.
None of us know it.
No,
we can
exactly.
just maybe we can just see glimmers in the Matrix sometimes.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, we talk about we were drinking too much, but like nowhere near the levels of Bob at his peak, and to do that kind of
we were diet partiers.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, to swim against the stream that Bob had created for himself was over like 20-25 years is, you know, really impressive. But again, it seems like it just, once he set his mind to it, it just kind of happened very easily.
Yeah, and when I was talking to him, and Bob is Nick and Dave Rose's uncle. He's a world-renowned sober coach, and he has a very colorful past with drugs and alcohol. so crazy that like he could have died multiple times. And I was using this analogy with him. It's almost like this first 35 years or 40 years was like pulling an elastic back as far as go. And you thought like 10 times that the elastic was going to explode. Yeah. But then when he chose to release that elastic, it fucking flew in the other direction so hard. And I would argue that his life is equally as high stress as it was back then. But his outcome or net benefit that he brings the ecosystem is... There is a net benefit where before it was just like a car that was on fire driving through a mall, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know, his elastic band is just made out of some kind of other material that
Element 115.
Element 115, exactly.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, you know, he's strong and he made it through. But yeah, puts a lot of his whole thing puts, you know, our conversation in perspective. Like, you know, it can get so much darker, you know, and you can still kind of
you can always make it out. You just got to make that choice, or something has to happen that switches gears for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said that you got really sick. I was starting to feel sick. I was really out of shape, but I was feeling I couldn't even drink anymore. Like I was literally drinking and getting like so red and migraines instantly, where I'd have to go sleep on the grass like after 2 drinks.
Like an allergic reaction?
Yeah. Wow. Like it's like I literally became allergic to alcohol. I couldn't drink anymore.
Wow.
It's like I didn't even choose it. I just couldn't drink anymore.
That's crazy. What year? When was this? I'm trying to put it in the context.
2016?
2016
and a half maybe.
Okay.
And I just couldn't handle alcohol anymore. So I just stopped. I stopped being hungover. I stopped.
Did you go cold? Like you still have like a glass of wine and stuff sometimes?
Yeah, here and there. I'll have a beer here and there, but other than that, a couple of times a year I'll
have a go.
I'll fate.
Yeah.
I'll have a go, but always in controlled scenarios. Like I'll be at home and an old friend comes over.
Yeah.
And we have some drinks, maybe some edibles, and
put on Master of Puppets
and just watch rock concerts all night.
Yeah.
That's the extent of my like wild energy. Where before it was like, nah, we're going out, we're walking around, we're going to go to every house party. Luckily, like I wasn't the kind of guy who drove during that. A
lot of guys did in Hudson too. Like the amount of DUIs coming out of Hudson are crazy.
Crazy. And I guess I always knew in the back of my head that it's like the trouble didn't equate. So I was like a top member of .08, which is a service that picks you up and has someone follow in another car. And like literally 3 times a week, I had these. I knew them. Like it was the same people over and over.
Wow.
But at least I played it safe like that. But now,
frequent flyer.
Yeah, exactly. But now, that's not even close. That's like a different world. That's like not even a consideration. So yeah, like I said, once in a while I have a go, but for the most part, not for me, man. as my good friend Liam would say. You gotta get Liam, man.
I tried to. I came really close to scoring a Liam Gallagher interview because he was releasing that Unplugged album a few months ago, and I was like, I wonder what the hell Liam Gallagher is doing in quarantine. I thought that would be an interesting article because he was tweeting all this weird stuff. He had
a weird week. Yeah. I remember that particular portion, but he's back now. He just released something.
Yeah, and so I'd reached out to kind of get an interview about that, and then that didn't work out. So then I reached out to Noel Gallagher's people, and
what, to see if they can find Liam.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe saying, oh, it would be a cool way to kind of get back at Liam, like, I'll find Noel's gonna do it. And it came, in both cases came close, but it didn't end up happening. That would have been great though.
Okay, well, look,
I did speak to David Lynch though during quarantine to see like what he was
up to.
Yeah, that's crazy. Picking up the phone and hearing David Lynch on the other line is
so
pretty cool.
He's the legendary creator of the TV show Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And also a legendary filmmaker, right? About what are some of
Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, like just really kind of surreal, dark, heavy movies. But he's like this like bright kind of guy who has like a Midwestern accent. So it's really interesting.
So where does that come from? Well,
I think I think he's from the Midwest. I can't remember now, but
no. But where does that element of him, that dark, surrealist, almost absurdist?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think he said like it just comes from his like subconscious, and it's in all of us, and he's able to like tap into it.
He's got his finger on the pulse there.
Yeah,
he can control that.
Yeah, exactly, and he just works his shit out that way.
He's a big meditator, huh?
Yeah, Transcendental Meditation.
Yeah,
that was kind of like the foot in the door for that interview. It was just like, hey, let's talk about TM. If 1 billion people meditate at the same time during lockdown, could we have world peace? Because that's like one of the stated goals of Transcendental Meditation. So he said, if we all do this, this could be a chance for like world peace here.
That's kind of what this Galactic Federation of Time Travelers.
Yeah, which I need to know.
And
what's going on
what
here?
This logo is.
Yeah, can you explain the logo? Can you explain the Federation? I'm asking the questions now.
Perfect. Yeah, you can ask as many questions as you want. And for the most part, it's a light and fun thing, right? It's almost like it's associated to my music or the time travel brand. And really what it is, it's loosely based on the Galactic Federation of Planets from Star Trek. And that is a time 300 or so years in the future where, let's say, the human race has reached a certain level of consciousness that opens it up to the other planets. Because it's almost like now we don't deal with other planets because we're still too primitive. And so that's why it's the segue with the consciousness and world peace and David Lynch's TM. So it's like one day we can raise our consciousness and be able to start dealing with the galaxy, like all the other planets. So that's what it's essentially based on. But it's just a fun thing where it could be like, okay, you're a fan of the music, you're a fan of the podcast, you're a time traveler. It's kind of like a fun, goofy Comic-Con type community.
Okay, that's why I'm wearing this.
You know what I mean? Like Trekkies or Star Wars fans or any of that stuff. I was basing it, like my big inspiration, like Iron Maiden fans or Metallica fans or who's that band in the 70s? Like the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
It's just like
Kiss Army,
Lady Gaga's Monsters, Slipknot's Maggots. I was like, let's make the time travelers. And essentially time travel is an analogy or a metaphor for personal growth or raising your consciousness. And it's all based on this logo over here. And this logo, this is our subconscious mind. So this is a human.
Okay.
2 circles. So this is our body or our subconscious mind. That's our conscious mind. And it's about understanding that your subconscious has 90% of the control of this system that we call our vessel or our human body. And if you can understand that everything in our environment is an input that programs our subconscious, once you can be aware of altering your environment to choose the program of your choice, then you can align yourself, raise your consciousness, get better perspective, and essentially have a good impact on the world. And it's the same principle as the meditation.
So that other circle with big is the world.
Yeah, that's the world. And you, once you're aligned, can be a time traveler, and that's your little rocket ship. That's what the big triangle is. And it can be as light or as deep as you want to go. But it's kind of it's the summary of my learnings since I changed my lifestyle and understand.
How did you come to this conclusion and
it,
this
it was
shape?
it was years. It was years. It was something called the input theory that I was wrestling with.
What
It's
were you
like-
looking for? You're looking for answers.
Yeah, I was looking for answers. Like, why? I always want to know why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I thinking what I'm thinking? Why everything? Right? Almost like a little kid just wanting to know why. And it's like, okay, what happens when I put this type of food in my body? I started realizing that if I eat, let's say, shit food 3 days in a row, the next 3 days I want to eat shit. So I started to build this mechanism in my mind that says the machine wants more of what you give it. So if I eat clean for 2 weeks, I want to eat clean food. So I'm like, well, I'm putting it in the tank, and then that tank wants more of what I'm putting in. When I'm drinking every week, I want to drink every week. That next Friday, it's like the booze alarm inside me is on. And I start to realize that food is like that. People are like that. Information is like that. So, the social dilemma talks about like the algorithm or the not the rabbit hole, but the feedback loop that we create that is just reinforcing the same things. So literally this algorithm or this formula that the machine wants more of you give it is true. It's true psychologically. It's true on a material, food, microbiome, energy kind of vibe. So the whole, and I was really into biohacking and understanding biology and really understanding how we function. And for the most part, I came up with this analogy because it's like whatever we expose ourselves to, we acclimate to and we want more of, because our body on a subconscious level says, oh, this is the new safe.
It's a feedback loop.
And there's the gut brain connection, and that the gut is communicating to the brain essentially, okay, well, our microbiological makeup is currently set to this and we want more of that because that is safe. And so, yeah, obviously I'm taking leaps here. This is not all like documented, proven, but there's a lot of different factions that are just starting to show that this is essentially how we function. So at the end of the day, like I think the definition of biohacking is alter your environment to alter yourself, because we are species that adapt to our environments. So if we want to create something of ourselves that's different than what we are, you got to change your environment, right? You got to change the people you hang with. You got to change the stuff that you read, the stuff that you watch. And that's why when I see people, let's say on the political spectrum or on the diet spectrum, like I'm keto, I'm vegan, I'm left, I'm right, whatever it is, usually if you look at their surroundings, they are what their surroundings are. And so I always make this joke of if you take a person from state Y and put them in state X, within 6 months, they will be full state X. And the same goes back and forth. If you're not aware of your inputs and that we are a vessel and whatever we think our thoughts are, they're just a product. They're motivated by our subconscious mind that has no other desire than to conform to its current reality. But if you alter that reality, you can rewire your subconscious mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah, it makes sense. It's
So
broad and ambitious, but did that help you kind of set yourself straight? Like how did that
Totally.
How did understanding that make your life better?
It made me understand when I'm feeling like shit, or it made me understand that my feelings are not necessarily my own, or like my gut reactions. It taught me to decipher them and question where my motivations are coming from. It's like, I want to do this or I want to eat this. Well, why is that? And so I'm creating like a live filtering process where I ask a question. It's like, well, I feel like doing this, but why do I really want to do it? And it kind of helps me say, oh, okay, well, no, this is nonsense. So it helps me bring like a binary filtering system to my actions, my motivations. And I know that if I want to change a habit, the first 3-4 days, I know they say 21 days, but the first 3-4 days are the hardest, because I know that my microbiological makeup that's used to, because that's a whole ecosystem that lives within us. There's trillions of bacterial cells that are like a civilization. And it's like you go to a country or a city that depends on a body of water. If you remove that body of water, everything that they do has to change, right? So that's the analogy that I use with our system. If they're used to getting a certain type of food or a certain kind of frequency or a certain type of whatever, when you're altering that, now they have to transition. And so feelings of pain, feelings of fear, anxiety, all these things are signals telling your brain, don't do this because it's going to alter our state. It's like a mafia of biology inside that's trying to get you to remain in the status quo. And so it's philosophical. I make leaps here and there, but all in all, it's a narrative that allows me to understand why I feel like the way I do and gives me the tools to allow me to achieve what I want to achieve, essentially.
So it's helped you.
Definitely helped me. That's why I'm basing it all on this. Do I explain it in depth like that? Depends on who asks me. Depends how much they want to get into it. But for the most part, if you like the music and you like the logo, that's as far as it needs to go.
Yeah.
Because if I'm making tunes that are uplifting you and you're singing lyrics that are planting Trojan horses of positivity within you, which is what I aim to do with my music, then it's contributing to that. So you don't even really need to know, right? We wear a lot of logos and brands and this and that, and their core values, what they stand for, not everyone knows them, but they're inherent in the products themselves. So
And
that's
you just kind of disconnected those two circles. Like you'd gotten to a point where you were out of sync with yourself.
Oh yeah, I was totally out of sync.
Because when you were in high school, you were like playing guitar alone in your bedroom.
Totally.
Yeah. And I was the same way too. You know, it's interesting that, but then you go to the other extreme of just like being out all the time.
Yeah, and
you wanted to reconnect with that.
Yeah, because
15-year-old?
Because we go into autopilot. We blindly become our environment. Like for example, let's do a thought experiment with you. You went to let's say a high school where, let's say the MO of the average student or the average parent who sent their student there was to be a professional, an engineer, a lawyer, a notary, right? So you were infused into that, and you can argue it, but maybe you were downloading this like these ideals and these values within yourself because we're just human, and we, in the tribal sense, we want to become our environment to fit in, and it's not like we're saying, oh, I want to fit in. It's like no, it's like style. You wear something that you think is cool, but your idea of cool is things that you've seen. It's the people that you follow. It's the people you like. Like your idea of cool maybe is Dave Grohl. Well, you kind of look like Dave Grohl, right? So,
I don't think he's cool. I don't think he's cool anymore. He's become like a Bruce Springsteen, like he was a great song. He is a great songwriter, but he's become like a caricature of himself.
Yeah.
Like when he does.
Well, because he's been in it so long, but I'm like 1995 Dave Grohl.
Yeah, even beyond then. He wrote some amazing. He's an insanely good drummer.
Yeah,
like really, really good drummer. Of course. But anyways,
but
he's an interesting case study of someone who's cool and stops being cool.
Yeah, well, the point being that our idea of cool or our idea of values is based on the average of what we're consuming, what's coming into our inputs, what's coming into our ears and our eyes, and we are all vibration, right? Like you ever see that experiment where they put a bunch of metronomes and they all go in sync?
No. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if the metronomes they were probably going the same BPM because they're programmed, but they were all out of sync. And within a minute or 5 minutes, whatever it is, they're all in sync. Like women on their periods, their cycles, they get into line. Yeah. So we're still very primitive, but I'm an artist, so I like to look far. That's just the way I see it, and I like to find similarities, or I like to find consistencies that maybe can inform something greater. So we do really become our environment on a psychological level and on a biological level. That's why we become the average of our friends, right? Like look at your band. You guys probably all seem like a unit. It's not like you have to coordinate your outfits. You just seem to work together.
Yeah, exactly. A good band, yeah, for sure.
Right? Because you are each other. And so essentially, I didn't understand this, and this allows me to understand what my motivations are. It allows me to actually understand others better and not have judgment or not be upset with people.
I think that's the key right there is once you become more aware of other people and less hung up with your own bullshit, it's just easier to navigate. People see you, they see that you're curious about them, and then it's just...
Exactly. And that's why I love to ask these questions. And that's why I like to ask, about parents and what led to this and what led to that, because other people interest me so much. And essentially everything I'm doing is trying to confirm my theory here, my input theory, that we are our environment. And it allows me, let's say someone has radically different food views than I do, or radically different political. I wouldn't even say I have political views, but you know what I mean. It just allows me to step outside of myself and see that, oh, this vessel downloaded that. This vessel downloaded this. I, the observer, can find common ground and make the best of this rather than trying to spit out what's in my vessel to you, who's trying to spit out what's in your vessel to me. So it's allowed me to be a more peaceful, calm, understanding person.
Yeah. And for you, it helps encoding it in this kind of language of space, time, and travel. But it's not that different from, like, say, you know, David Lynch, who's presenting these very bizarre images that come from his own subconscious, yet millions of people can connect with it, you know? So it does go beyond his little brain and my little brain, your little brain. It's just like, why is it that, you know, a little person dancing, you know, in the Black Lodge resonates with so many people, you know? There's something in all of us that, like, for some reason, that's
it hits and it's striking and it's iconic. It does something to our subconscious mind. It pierces the veil. It's very bizarre, you know.
Yeah, and we don't know why, and we can't articulate why. And that's once you start tapping, it's hard to create that in people, to, you know, to get that out of people with just images and sound. But
yeah, that's why I decided to make a striking, like, uniform and a color scheme and this and that, because it's just like that little person in Twin Peaks. It's just like the little person in Twin Peaks. What it's really doing is it's resting in the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
And so he likes to put things in there that shock your balance of normal, your what you're used to seeing. Like, right, it's not normal. What is a great ad? If you're scrolling through your feed, a great ad is something that makes you stop and look. And usually if it stops and looks, it has to be something that's off. Something that's like, Kanye is great with this in his music, in his visuals, in his shoes. Everything that he does, his all rests in the uncanny valley because it's inherent marketing. His product stands out because he's doing the David Lynch thing.
Yeah.
Whether he's aware of that, which I'm very sure he is, he knows exactly what he's doing. But it's all connected to the speaking to the subconscious mind, because the conscious mind and this is science, 95% is subconscious, 5% of our thoughts, actions, motivations are conscious in nature. So when they talk about free will or all that good stuff, it's like, it's yes and no, mostly from our perspective. It's no. From the outside perspective, it's yes, or whatever the fuck I'm talking about. But understanding how we function has been the root of my pursuit of this, and creating an artistic endeavor based on it that can be as shallow as you want and fun. You know, rock and roll show, there's UFOs flying around. Everyone's got a time traveler armband on. It's fun. But if you want to go deeper, it's really a message about understanding how you function and understanding others so you can see how much we have in common, which just makes more peace, right? Peace and love.
Nice. And where do the UFOs fit into this?
Well, I just like sci-fi. That's basically it. I like sci-fi. Time travel is an analogy of moving forward in time and raising your consciousness. So you're able to see the same world with different eyes and different perspective. So it's not time travel. Well,
it's all just introspection is what you're saying. Like different forms of being able to look, you know, whether temporally or spatially or whatever within, and then be like,
like you've time traveled if you're able to go to first of all, you were on one path. You were on one possible reality. And then you shifted to another possible reality. In my opinion, and in the vein of all this, you are a time traveler because you went from one dimension to another, or one universe to a different one. There was one that you could have stayed on. And the reason I like all of this stuff is that, like, the leading minds in quantum physics and all that stuff talk about, they don't know how to tangibly show it, but the talk of multiple timelines and multiple dimensions and all these things, these are things that are mathematically proven.
Yeah. Or mathematically possible. Yeah.
Theoretically, mathematically possible. And so I just lean into it. Like all the comic books do it. For me, it's just a lot of fun. Like I don't take it. I'm not trying to tell anyone that I'm really time traveling, because if you think that, then you've missed the point, really.
Yeah, it's your imagination. It's reading these kinds of things makes you say like, oh, this inspires me on some level. And a lot of good sci-fi comes out of that, and a lot of interesting ideas come out of these.
Yeah, because that's why I love
things like quantum, you know, like entanglement and all that
and
stuff.
I use those things like I don't even understand that shit. I just use it for to be the sprinkle and the color. You know, in terms of the color palette I'm using, these are the colors I'm using, and I stick to those colors. So I have my body of work, let's say, is in this spectrum.
Yeah.
And so it's just like less is more.
I spoke to a quantum physicist once about, I wrote an article called What is Nothing? You know, does it exist? And because if nothing exists, then it's a thing. It's not really not, you know, that kind of premise. I spoke to a philosopher and a quantum physicist, like cosmologist type guy. And he said, if you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics.
Okay, so even the people who get it don't get it.
It's so beyond that, like anything logical, rational, yet the numbers are like really precise. So it's an interesting jumping off point for a lot of ideas. Like, you know, you're talking about time travel or, you know, teleportation and, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
So I mix philosophy with that awesome quantum physics stuff, but it's more just a vibe. It's an experience.
Have you read anything by Jacques Vallée? Have you read any of his books?
No.
He's got a book called Dimensions, where he's been researching UFOs for like 50, 60 years. And in Dimensions, he kind of lays out a new framework because he was working with Hynek in the 50s and 60s.
On Project Blue Book.
Yeah, Project Blue Book. And then, you know, he became like a Silicon Valley guy, made a ton of money. So he could just independently investigate all these investigations, all of these UFO sightings. And in Dimensions, he kind of really lays out a new framework where it's not extraterrestrial, these physical crafts coming from other galaxies or planets or whatever. It's an interdimensional phenomenon, which, like you're saying, he kind of is permitted within the parameters of theoretical physics, quantum physics. So I think you'd really enjoy that. I'll give you my copy.
Amazing.
It's really, really good. It's super interesting, and it completely shifts. Because this is a guy, he was an astrophysicist, PhD in mathematics, I think, and he's an AI guy, like just a real actual scientist, because there's so many hacks in that field, you know, of UFOs, and it's like, oh, it's just an actual smart guy saying, you know, some pretty far out, way more far out than they got in, you know, these aliens get in a little like metal thing, and they fly over.
Because he can think much more deeply. And in the wise words of Judge Smales from Caddyshack, Jacques Vallée is no slouch.
He is no slouch.
Right? But this is great because now we can talk about Jacques Vallée, because I don't know all that much about him. You interviewed him.
I did interview him.
So can you...
Another unpublished interview, sadly.
What the fuck?
Because I ended up writing like 4,000 words. Because what he was saying was...
Is that like a book?
Yeah. A chapter, maybe.
Okay.
But someone should write a book about Jacques Vallée. But yeah, I interviewed him about... Again, his promotional thing. Either there's a movie coming out called A Witness of Another World, which I think it's on Amazon Prime. You should really, really watch it. If you want to see what he's trying to do and apply.
So it's on Amazon Prime?
Yeah.
A Witness of Another World.
Witness of Another World. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. So I said, look, let's talk, you know, like for half hour or an hour. We ended up speaking like 2.5 hours. He was very, very generous with his time.
Did you speak in French?
A little bit, but his English is better than mine. Like he was really, really getting his point across in English. And yeah, he kind of laid it all out, and I had a million questions for him, but yeah, he was a scientist. He saw a UFO when he was like 14 or 15 up in the sky in France. And him and his father and his mother saw like a silver disc spinning in the air in the 50s. In the mid 50s in France. He was 15. And then the next day he spoke to a kid at school, a friend of his at school, who said he saw the same thing in the same place. You know, where most 15-year-old boys would be like, oh, that's weird. But what Jacques Vallée did is he was able to determine the height and the location of the UFO by comparing where he was, where his friend was, and, you know, where they saw the UFO. So he was able to estimate the height and the distance and everything. So obviously, even just from a young age, interested in it, but interested in figuring out what it is empirically. And that's, you know, a way different approach than what you're hearing, you know, most UFO talk. They start with the premise that they're coming from outer space and that they're aliens from outer space, and then they work backwards from there. Jacques Vallée, you know, is doing what I think most people should do when they're looking into this, is starting with the phenomenon, starting with the individual case, and then using the data from that to kind of build a larger matrix or pattern of what it is. So it's backwards from, which is why I think it's such it's so kind of dismissed, the phenomenon, because it's so not scientific, the approach.
Because everyone is, like you're saying, instead of taking his approach, they're seeing it and then creating their own story that has absolutely no basis in fact or science or anything. It's like, oh, they're from this place and they're from
Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah, Alpha Centauri or whatever the fuck it is. And so what did you get out of it? And what's your view of UFOs?
Well, it's what did I get out of it? I just got, like, he's like 80 years old and so sharp, so smart, and so open-minded about everything. And, he was so generous and like just so passionate about this. And he doesn't want to kind of, well, what I got out of it was just like, pursue whatever gets you jazzed up. You know what I mean? Like he's, for 65 years has been investigating UFOs because it's interesting to him. It stimulates him intellectually. And it can be a great fuel for keeping you vital at, in older age. So yeah. And what do I think UFOs are? I don't know what they are, which is, sadly most people can't, in the field don't have the balls to say, I don't know what this is. They say, well, it must be, visitors from another planet, like, because that's just the pop culture understanding of what this is. That's a weird feedback loop there of how UFOs are portrayed in the media, and then how people interpret them themselves when they do see. It's more complicated than there's a big cultural aspect to UFOs. Like, I remember speaking to a woman in England. She had seen a UFO. It was about like 15 years ago. She said it came down over this like small town in England, and a beam shot out of a disc, and then this orb came out, and then a bunch of DNA helices were like floating around, And she said something really interesting. She was like, it's quite possible that's what I saw was so far beyond my frame of reference intellectually or her own experience that your brain kind of fills in the gaps, kind of like, I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly when the ships came over, the indigenous people in North, Central America couldn't see them. I don't know if that's true, but the point being that if sometimes you'll see a technology or something that just it's so beyond your experience that you don't know, your mind creates an image. Yeah, because those images come from your brain, right? So your brain creates an image that you perceive, and so it's possible that UFO, that's a big component. The perception. Well, what's going on in these sightings is this thing, and a lot of that perception is coming from the cultural information. You see it through the filter of whatever culture you live in.
Yeah, because our mind does fill in gaps. Like, even right now, I'm not seeing all of you. I'm seeing most of you or a portion of you, and my mind has the ability to fill in the gaps. Like, that's a real thing. That's why I watched a TED Talk called Our Brain Hallucinates Our Reality, something like that, where it's using a lot of memory to build what we have. Yeah. So if you're introduced to something, and that goes back to the David Lynch thing, why our system has such a glitch almost when we see something we're not used to seeing, or in a context we're not used to seeing, it pierces that thing. So if you see a UFO and you've never seen a UFO before, maybe you're gonna see a flying saucer because that's the only frame of reference that you have. But is it actually that? Yeah. Do we even know?
Yeah, because in the Bible, I think it's Ezekiel 1:4. It talks about wheels spinning it talks about wheels spinning in the sky, a metal wheel spinning in the sky, and 4 like angels coming out, floating around. Like, it sounds a lot like a UFO sighting. Mm-hmm. It would be. I think that's the Old Testament. It would be like 5,000 years old. And throughout history, people have talked about seeing angels floating or airships, like a big ship, like a boat floating in the sky. And it's always kind of like the phenomenon has typically been a reflection of like cutting edge technology, like one step further. When you look at it over the course of millennia, it's understood with whatever the cultural baggage people have. So now it's interpreted as, hypersonic, or time traveling or whatever. But I think what Jacques Vallée was saying when I spoke to him was, in fact, it's whatever it is just using those cultural cues to teach us.
Like we're using the language that we have to explain what we don't know.
Or it is using the language we have
to express itself.
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of push us forth with our, that's kind of speculative, but it's a lot more interesting than...
Well, speculative in the sense that...
Well, to infer that there is a purpose to any of this is speculative. But it's a hell of a lot more interesting than flying saucer trips on phone wire in New Mexico. Like it just, they have this technology, but they just crash lands, because they can't navigate properly. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so the whole Roswell crash. Well, Jacques Vallée does talk about the Roswell crash. So,
I think on Joe Rogan he talked about it. Yeah.
So what's your... So you think that do you believe that? Do you buy it?
I don't know it that well. There's so much. It's like, was it a weather balloon? Because sometimes the reality is intelligence agencies or the government or the military will purposely encourage UFO reports to kind of muddy all of the real technology that's out there. So it also benefits, the military industrial complex to have these stories out there because as disinformation, because that way, let's say Chinese or Russian or whoever's competing with American military, they don't know what's
OG
legit cases.
OG fake news.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know what the legitimate sightings are. They don't know what the sightings are that are new technology. It just makes it impossible to kind of figure that out, which is why, in 2017, when that New York Times article came out about the Tic Tacs, which was never classified, by the way, it was never top secret. It was, which would suggest that maybe there wasn't a national security threat. All of a sudden the military puts this out. Everyone's like, well, it must be true. The Pentagon saying it's true, well, you have to be a little more discerning than just accepting that what the government is saying is true because it reinforces, the fact that you want there to be UFOs.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
confirmation bias.
Yeah, exactly. Like from the fucking military, you have to be even more skeptical.
Okay. So because they want us to know what they want us to know.
Yeah.
Essentially, right?
That's why it's disseminated. Yeah.
Yeah. I have this crazy theory that all of this lockdown stuff, all of this, like every government closing and operating in the same way, which like in the first time in history, the whole world is like operating by pretty much the same standard, that it's all really just preparing us for a false UFO threat where the whole world. So like the goal would be like unification of the planet, which is a positive goal. But the only way to do that is through like negative reinforcement of like, first, perhaps and this is all just like a fun thought experiment. This is not what I believe, but I like to think like if I were to make a sci-fi movie, like it would be based on this. So imagine it's just like speeding up infrastructure by 10 years or connectivity or all that stuff, so that when the next threat is presented, that is perhaps otherworldly or other dimensionally, this planet is like connected and can be unified as one.
Oh, wait. So you're saying that it would be like a false flag kind of thing?
a global false flag.
Wait, by the government or by
the government?
Yeah.
By the government. Yeah. So they're they're starting to show. They've been showing us aliens being like negative for like years and years and years, other than ET.
And now they're saying there might be something here, and then
and now they've been planting these seeds of the Tic Tac, and like all this stuff is coming out, so that they can prep us. They've been prepping us for the last 70 years. And then when it finally appears, right when we think 2020 is going to get worse, it's like the fucking aliens come out.
And what's crazy is that for a lot of people, they feel like they're at the point where like if a UFO flew right through the studio, it wouldn't be that weird in the context of, what we've been exposed to in the media in the last year or so. But it's another way to control
the narrative
in people's minds and
they don't progression of society.
Yeah. And
and so what
people don't know what's happening anymore. Like it's just like what
honestly,
the hell is going on?
We never really know because the more we learn, the more we discover that we know nothing.
Yeah,
Jon Snow.
Yeah,
like that's just That's just always how it is. But I always love to put a positive spin on my own conspiracies, because oftentimes conspiracy theories are always about, the New World Order trying to shut you down or trying to control you or trying to this. And I'm like, no, what if they create these like false things to actually help us, because we're so stuck in our...
Who's they? The government? Who's they?
They in terms of what? Like...
Whatever...
Like those people who want to help us?
Oh, okay. People on Earth, or are we talking about...
No, I'm talking about people on Earth.
Okay.
Talking about people on Earth. So where were we here? So yeah, there's a lot of theys. But I'm saying, like, this is the theory. Create the false alien threat, or create a false whatever. Like whether it's a terrorist attack or a killer virus or a UFO or the communists, whatever it is, it's to create a fear that allows us to come together, right? Like, was it Nixon? Was it Nixon that said at the it was some big assembly where he was talking? He's like, well, if there was an alien threat,
that was Reagan. At the
it was
UN,
Reagan.
Yeah.
We would at the UN. Yeah, what the fuck? I know. It's a guy. It's a guy. He wasn't president. So it's creating these negative reinforcements to bring us together. So in my conspiracy mind, they are creating these false flags, but they are for our benefit.
Yeah.
And that's controversial.
The thing is, you can't prove it one way or another, right?
Oh, I know. That's why I'm just making it up.
Yeah, exactly. And,
it's not the truth.
I find myself, getting like caught up in these possibilities, but that's why you have to be able to back away from a lot of the conspiracy stuff, because like it's so interesting, and it's like it's such a different way of looking at reality. It's almost like taking shrooms. It's like everything looks completely different when you start buying into these things, but there's no end to it, right? Because anything that contradicts it is part of the conspiracy. So like you just get lost in like all of this stuff. So, but it is, if you're open-minded, sometimes you end up, just exploring this possibility intellectually that, maybe this is what UFOs are, maybe they do exist. Maybe it is aliens. Like, but
yeah, like we don't know anything, right?
Yeah.
So I just like to create narratives for myself that are empowering. So like, if all these people are obsessed with conspiracy theories, if it's not helping their lives be better, it's a waste of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I think it tends to have the opposite effect.
It always has.
People's lives are so, they just like trying to make it more exciting.
Oh yeah, so they're out to get us, like the government.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's just everyone around them is like, you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah,
and then so yeah, that's not good.
Yeah,
and that's, I feel like most of the time it goes in that fear kind of direction.
Well, because it's easy. Someone sees a YouTube video where they're presented with new information because they don't really do any other research than that, and they're like, oh well, this is obviously the reality. And it's like, no, this is something that gets a lot of views because it's in that uncanny valley and it's interesting and we want to believe.
Yeah.
In the wise words of Fox Mulder, I want to believe. But I like to go on thought experiments.
Yeah.
By no means am I saying this is it, because like I said, we know nothing. Is it like 99% of everything is dark matter?
Yeah. Yeah. 80 in that nothing article we went into dark matter.
So it's essentially the idea of like we don't even know what nothing is and everything is nothing, so
yeah, and they just came up with dark matter to just because they know there's like some kind of material, some kind of thing that's there, and they're just like, okay, we'll call it dark matter.
Yeah, maybe it's just the glue in between that connects us all. Like who really we don't know, but it's fun to pontificate.
Yes,
right, and that's all I am. I just want to pontificate. Because anyone who says that they know what it is, that's when it's, okay, I'm going to have fun here. Because if someone's saying they know absolutely, it means they're full of shit. So it's like, Ancient Aliens vibes.
Yeah.
I love Ancient Aliens, but I don't take it as gospel, right?
Yeah, no, it's just a fun story,
It's a fun story.
Yeah.
And create...
I went to a UFO. I met that guy from Ancient Aliens, George...
Tsoukalos.
He spoke to me only in French.
And he's Swiss, right?
Yeah, well, he had a crazy eye because exactly. He's Swiss. And I said, hey, how are you? I said, I'm from Montreal. He said, oh, vous êtes Québécois. And then I go, yeah, it's really cool to meet you. I like your show. He's like, mais tu sais, j'aime Montréal. And he wouldn't break like character. Like he was just so committed to speaking to me only in French.
Well, he's a committed guy.
Yeah. He's the hairstyle was fully
brown
there.
suit.
I think no, we were in the desert, so he had like
Short sleeve.
he had like
brown
a short sleeve like
an archaeologist shirt.
exactly.
Man on the scene.
That's what he does. You know.
Yeah, that's his vibe.
That's his thing. I was at what was it called? Contact in the Desert. It was a big UFO.
And so, what brought you there?
Well, Jacques Vallée told me about it while I was working on this thing.
Amazing.
And total.
You're so cool, by the way.
Shush. And I was total. This was like it was in what's it called? Something. It was near Palm Springs, and I was going with Bob. We were in LA.
Again,
Bob goes
the tether that connects it all.
Exactly. Because he goes, I want you to come to this sobriety conference in La Quinta, which is outside of Palm Springs. So we booked a trip for La Quinta. Then I'm talking to Jacques Vallée. He goes, they're screening the movie Witness of Another World at Contact in the Desert. You should check it out. So I look at the dates, and it's the same time I was in La Quinta, 5 minutes away from this sobriety conference I was at with Bob was this UFO conference. So it just worked out totally. I spent a full day at the UFO conference talking to it was for an article. I pitched it to an editor, and he was into it, and I spoke to the men and women who fly from across the country to go listen to
this, yeah.
I met the guy, Fire in the Sky, I can't remember his name, Walter, the guy who was abducted by the aliens on the canoe trip, and he reappeared in town like 2 or 3 days later.
No, I don't know him.
The movie Fire in the Sky from the 90s.
No, I don't know it.
No, okay, well, it's a really famous abduction case.
Okay.
And we were in this conference, and he's talking about what happened to him, and people are asking, did the aliens have 4 fingers or 5 fingers? And you can tell he's just like, oh, fuck these people. Like that's so not an interesting question.
I know, but it's hard to make $1 out there. So.
Yeah, it is, and you gotta do the circuit of it. But then I remember asking,
you gotta put in the work.
Yeah, and I remember asking him, did it affect your spiritual beliefs? Because I was just trying to throw him a bone. He was gasping for air with all these crazy questions. And he was like, that's a really interesting question. And then he went into kind of the spiritual implications of if this happened, how could this happen? His own Christian beliefs and all that. And, and what Vallée was telling me was that this affects people on a way deeper level than just, I saw a thing floating in the sky. It changes your whole belief system. And that could be, Vallée speculates that that could be the purpose of these things. And if you talk to the people, like I have, who have witnessed, you leave out the what shape was it? How many lights were there? How many fingers did the aliens have? And you just talk to them purely about the impact it's had on their life. You get way more interesting answers about what it could potentially be. It's just, you have to be open-minded and you have to be empathetic, and you who cares how fast it was going or triangulating? Just talk. And if you know anyone who's seen UFO, just talk to them about that, and you get way more interesting answers than I saw, a cigar shape bouncing around in the sky. That's cool, but it doesn't shed a lot of light on what it could be other than a thing in the sky. But when you talk to witnesses and people who claim to have been abducted, and you ask them about psychologically what it does to them, then you get it. It's a completely different phenomenon. I
find that so interesting because it's almost to them and their experience, it's a proof that there's more, right?
Yeah.
It's innately or essentially proof that there's something beyond what we know. And that's a lot of times when people with psychedelics, right, they see something that gives them a profound new perspective of the world that they inhabit. And spirituality or religion or UFOs or mushroom trips, whatever the narrative that you believe is, if it's one that gives you some kind of faith or some kind of sense of hope, whatever the formula, whatever the variables are, the formula remains the same. And if you think of something that empowers you, there's a neurochemical effect on your brain, your body, that actually improves your state of being. It's essentially gratitude, right? Because any kind of faith, it's out of frame, don't worry. Any kind of faith kind of gives you allows you to find the silver lining. And when you find the silver lining, you are creating a narrative. You don't know if that silver lining is true, but if you choose to believe it, like actually really lean into like this happened, like, we're talking about our path and our past. If we choose to believe it like that, that is going to de-stress our system. It's going to give us a positive feeling. It's going to increase our immune system, and it's going to give us a more positive outlook on life in general. So that's what I love about this stuff, is that and that's why I'm empathetic to different belief systems, because whatever you believe, if it's actually having a positive benefit on you and making you more grateful, who am I to say that the material layer of what you're saying is bullshit? Like, what are all the underlying things?
And it's all the same thing. Everyone's just saying the same thing.
Yeah. Have you found community from it? Have you found more meaning? Do you have faith in something greater than you, that you're not in this alone? Like, these are all consistent threads that are in any great movement or community or religion or belief system or whatever it is. It's those underlying things. And we're very literal. We're very literal beings, which is why I attribute to our still primitive state. But if you can see, it's like being the observer and finding the things that connect us. If you can do that, then you'll be much more empowered.
Yeah. Yeah, because you realize everyone's in the same boat and trying to figure shit
but
out.
if you're stuck on the literal things, then that's for Twitter and YouTube comments.
Yeah.
Like the people who get triggered by taking things out of context. Like, these are people who clearly don't get it and just want to make noise.
Yeah. Yeah, for the sake of making noise. It's just boring.
Yeah, like we could be talking about something. Well, it's not. That's not the real meaning of quantum entanglement. Well, then you haven't really understood the breadth of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
which is fine.
Which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But the literal nature of the human mind is just goofy.
Yeah, it is. It is. But whatever. Like, it's a filter.
Yeah, and it's something that I have, and someone who doesn't get it, I actually understand why they don't get it. Yeah. So I'm no longer like mad at anyone. I don't get mad at anyone.
It's a lot easier to go.
Oh my God. Like, right? Even if the whatever led me to feeling to not being mad at anyone, even if all of that is completely scientifically wrong, the end result is that I'm not mad at anyone.
Yeah, so what's better?
So who gives a shit?
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if you're right or wrong? What really matters is,
am I a better person?
Yeah.
Am I better to my environment?
Yeah.
Am I nicer to my mom?
Yeah.
Well, if I am, who the fuck think? If I think I can walk through walls, and that's the source of my power, I don't care.
Yeah, a lot of people would rather be right than be happy, and it's just so much easier to...
Yeah, and that's just a low state of consciousness, in my opinion. That's not a time traveler. That's an NPC.
What does that mean?
A non-player character.
Wow. Oh.
So in a game, like, when you're playing Vice City, and then there's these like there's like a random guy in a tracksuit walking down the street, and you can punch him in the face.
Yeah, he bumps into you and swears.
Yeah, but so it's like there's also like NPC theory that is everyone at a real character in this simulation.
You should start a cult.
Ah, fuck no! I don't want to
start a cult. Yeah,
why?
Because the branding's good, the ideas are interesting.
I know, but
you're charismatic.
But to start a cult, you actually like the whole. What I've been saying in the last 10 minutes is that I have no idea if anything I'm saying is scientifically proven or true.
It doesn't matter if you have a cult.
Yeah, but to have a cult, you have to. I think you have to be like. You have to have narcissistic.
Oh,
tendencies.
but yeah, that's very true.
Like you have to like want to make people believe that you are the one who knows. And the big, huge thing of what I'm saying is that I really don't know anything.
That could be your cult, though. You could be the guy
the good
who
cult.
doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, because it's essentially I can start a cult, but if I like maybe in some other like bizarro dimension. But I don't have that. Like, I don't want people to rely on me.
They have a commune in Rigo.
Yeah, no, man, I'm not fucking interested. I'm not interested. I like dressing like I'm in a cult. I like having a uniform, but maybe that's because I went to private school and I don't want to waste my decision making on what
it's good. Having a uniform is good. You don't have to think about what you
I love it.
It's just...
You're almost always wearing all black, right?
Yeah, a lot. I wear a lot of black. It's just easier, you know. Like I don't
Yeah,
like.
you don't have
I
to choose.
have like 3 things of clothing that I wear, and it's
Yeah. It's not like you're going to go get a radical new haircut. Like your haircut is part of your uniform, your brand.
yeah.
Same. I'm not going to get some coif, right? Well, I can't.
You had great hair though. You had like a bit of a pompadour at one point.
Yeah, I look like a jerk. I look like a fucking jerk.
How much work went into the pompadour?
Not much.
No?
Not much. It was, there was a method.
There was a method?
Yeah. I'd get out of
Like,
the
what's that,
shower.
like-
I guess I'd dry it and then I'd,
Because I think my hair's too thin. I don't think I'd be able to do a pompadour.
my hair was mega thin.
Was it?
Yeah.
So how did you get it like that?
Hairspray.
Okay, so you do
A
the
lot of hairspray.
okay.
Yeah. A lot of hairspray. And then it got to the point where my hair was just thinning out so hard that like shaved, it looks like I have more hair than I do.
Yeah, because it looks like if it were to grow in, you'd have like a Gord Downy kind of like
Yeah, the
thing,
strip, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's better on one side than the other, but when it grows out, it's really sad. Every time I see a newborn baby, I'm like, oh, we have the same haircut.
So it's more thinning than like
No,
lack of hair. It's just very thin hair.
No, it's a combination of that. I had thin hair to start. And so like the coverage is good, but yeah, the hair is thin.
Yeah, okay.
Like it doesn't cover that much of my head.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of space in between.
Is there
a lot of
anything
dark matter in my head. A lot of dark matter on this skull.
Antimatter,
Yeah, antimatter on this skull.
Is there anything worse than a guy who has the really thin hair and just is like fighting
I talk about this all the time. Yeah, and then and I was talking about this with the legendary Donnie Deakis yesterday. We call it the hyper fade. Typically when someone has like no hair or they're really like clinging on for life, they get this like hyper fade coif where it's like super faded on the side and this to make it somewhat appear like there's more on top because they faded so much around.
like no one can tell.
You're not fucking fooling anyone, man.
Like no one can see what they're up to.
All they're telling me really is that they are out of touch with reality.
Yeah.
That they think they're getting away with something. It's just sad. It's like guys with comb overs.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I remember being a kid and being at church with my grandmother and seeing this guy in front of me with this like insane, and like he's doing it from the front. He doesn't see the disgrace that's going on in the back. And it's just like you see like this lacquered glue on his head with like a 2-inch space from the back that he missed. And it's just a fucking sad thing.
Is it desperation or is it narcissism? It's like a weird mix of like
It's like the
denial.
It's denial, and I think that like that echoes in every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
It
How
may-
you treat your hair is, how you treat
You're
everything.
everything, and everyone. You're just not honest. You're a fucking liar.
I let it flow.
Yeah, you gotta do what you can with what you got. When I started to sober up, I realized that my routine in the morning was ridiculous to do my hair. I was like, this fucking sucks. So I went to my barber. I'm like, this might be our last haircut, my friend.
Oh wow.
And he buzzed me. Not too short, pretty short than what I was used to. And then I was like, you know what? I went home and I did it even more. I went all the way. And that was that.
Yeah.
And I embraced myself and I felt free and liberated. Because what it says to me is like, this is a person who takes action, who makes decisions.
Yeah.
It's
You did the inventory. You crunched the numbers.
I crunched the numbers.
And what was the conclusion?
It's got to go.
It's got to go, right?
It's got to go. It's got to go. It's time, and it's time to move on. Like sometimes you got to hang the towel. That's just what it is. And someone who isn't is just essentially saying that in life they don't do what is necessary.
Yeah.
They let things hang on. They don't set boundaries.
Yeah. They
You know,
cling
I'm
on
going
to
deep.
No, but I mean, I think it's an interesting kind of.
Yeah. It honestly, your haircut will tell me everything about you.
Yeah.
It just.
And I hate to be so superficial, but there's some truth to that for sure.
Well, yeah. It's just that's my take on
Is
it.
that something maybe like from your dad? You learned how to like size people up quickly, like things like picking up on cues like that. Because I feel like he was good at that.
Yeah.
Like you sell stuff. You have to just be able to size someone up immediately, and
so you can play ball with them, right? So you can
put the pitch in their language.
Exactly. And that's why this whole time travel thing is because I had to learn how to explain things to a certain person right? Like depending on who I'm talking to on the given day, I have to be able to sell or explain a certain concept in words that they can understand. And if I was talking to engineers, I had to use very scientific kind of words. If I was speaking to, my friend Cobra Rick in Newfoundland, better to explain it after we've both had 8 rums,
Yeah.
So you just have to gauge that. And the more people you meet, the more, because you want to make a peaceful interaction out of everything. And that's like, my dad met so many people and was constantly on the road that his neural net and the volume of inputs that he was getting just gave him a better view just based on volume.
Yeah. Because he really knew how to
Yeah, and I think you have that innately, or you
Yeah,
don't.
because you do for sure. Like when you were traveling salesman, it was. But it's so. I mean, it's so much more valuable than what you're going to learn in university. Like what you're learning sitting across from someone. And it just transfers. Like you were saying with learning how to run a business logistically and whatever carried over into the creative stuff. So does figuring out how to read people and the best way to talk to them.
Yeah, because
in a real, in a genuine way for sure, but like also, it's sincere, but you're just trying to figure out how to.
Oh, it's always sincere because the goal is always to have a positive outcome, right? So if I'm going to go into a Midwestern home and spew non-Midwestern views and try to make a peaceful interaction out of that, that's a fail. That's why whenever I see kind of extreme viewed people posting things and saying, oh, this person's absolutely wrong, or they're stupid, or the left is dumb, or the right is this. It's like, have you really gone out, spoken to people before out of your community?
Yeah.
Have you been anywhere else in a different part of your state or province or a different part of the world to see that, the people that you think are so dumb are really just like you?
Yeah.
So when I see people who are like all angry and uppity, it just shows me a real lack of life experience
And empathy.
Well, you can't have the empathy if you haven't had the volume, the incoming, or the diversity, right? A lack of diversity on your diet for your gut makes your system and your immune system weaker. A lack of diversity in the content that you watch keeps you in a feedback loop, and the lack of diversity with people is the same thing.
Yeah.
How
It's
can
the same thing. Like, I'm working on a documentary now about organized crime, and it's, you're talking to some pretty intense people sometimes, who, aren't always forthcoming with information. But if you can connect with them and be like, look, I'm not going to judge you if you tell me something, let's just have a normal conversation. A big part of that is, figuring out what's the best way to approach this person to just make them feel like it's all good. It's safe. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to use this information in this is
to paint you in a negative light.
Yeah, exactly. We just want to get the story across, and this is, in the most accurate way possible. That's your job and my job. And so there's a whole thing. And like that knowledge you wouldn't learn in journalism. So you learn that by just being a fucking guy. You talk to people. If you're curious about people, you're going to genuinely curious about people. It doesn't matter, if it's someone who saw a UFO or a gangster or like a movie director, it's all the same thing. It's just like, I can learn something from this person, and will you please teach this to me? And then
I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
Because you have something that I want to learn from, that I want to understand. And the more understanding you have, the more empathy you can have. And if you go in with the mindset that you really don't know, like I don't just say this to be cute, that I don't know, because I don't. That's why I can't lean into really anything. That's why I've chosen art, because I don't know. There's no absolute truth. We have limited bandwidth to like, our brains have limited bandwidth. To understand absolute truth, you would have to take in all information and decipher it.
Yeah.
All information, everything. And that's impossible. So I go in with it always knowing that I don't know. And so I don't carry baggage that would limit my interaction, right?
Yeah.
I'm not coming in thinking that, you
want to go in loose.
Yeah, and it's like a loose lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like I could just talk to anyone. I don't talk to someone who's like getting drunk and judge them and be like, yo, maybe you shouldn't be living like that. That's not.
It's not good for your gut biome.
It's not my fucking business. Like whatever experiences have led you here, and whatever you're doing are clearly doing this has more pros than cons at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I have no judgment.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That's how people shut down and
yeah, it's like open, man. I don't know. That's why I want to learn.
yeah. And I think this'll work if you have that approach of just like, what can I learn from people and curious about, and yeah. There's a lot of interview shows, it's not easy to interview someone like and get what you want out of them in a way that's not like manipulative. So
Yeah. And I really, the format that I've been using is just ask questions about the people.
yeah, and people love talking about themselves.
Yeah,
I like talking about myself.
I want to learn about you. Like you're doing really cool stuff. You're a really nice guy. I want to learn how you tick.
Yeah.
I want to learn why you tick.
Why I talk.
Yeah, tick. Well, thick tick.
Oh,
You know how that is.
wow.
So earlier in the when we were outside the fifth dimension, you were discussing that Jacques Vallée did not want to discuss element.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Yeah,
Well, look. No problem.
yeah, but yeah. No, ask me about you can cut this, right?
Well, no, there's no cutting it straight through, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So look, I'll just wrap that up without saying any names.
Yeah.
So you mentioned to me earlier that you were talking to a specific person, and in a similar
Well,
space.
yeah, I guess, I mean, look, yeah, I remember asking Jacques Vallée about Bob Lazar. Is that what you're going to ask me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I guess it's fine. I guess it's not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Is Jacques Vallée not going to take your call after he watches this?
No.
Well, he can explain why he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to, then
Well,
that's
he
fine.
didn't elaborate.
He just didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so because maybe in his opinion it kind of like stained his work, maybe, or
yeah, I don't know. But if you're asking me, what do I think about Bob Lazar? Is that where you're going with that?
oh yeah,
Yeah. Like that was a red, when certain respected people in the UFO community, don't know, refuse to talk about someone like Bob Lazar, that's kind of a red flag, What do you think about Bob Lazar?
So it's a red flag for the person who doesn't want to talk to them, or a red flag for Bob Lazar?
For Bob Lazar. Yeah.
Because Jacques Vallée is really respected, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
getting
he is.
there.
Yeah.
Any of these guys who are like in let's say the fringes, on a mainstream level, maybe are seen as a little kooky, but within the community and within the scientific realm or whatever it is, he seems respected.
Yeah, of course. And Bob Lazar, the bottom line is like he's never really proven anything that he's saying, right? Has he? Because the burden's on him to prove.
Yeah. Well, there was a cool documentary.
Yeah. Yeah, but it didn't answer a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple of things in there like this, like hand size, like machine that he talked about 25 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, but then there's a sci-fi movie from the 70s that has that machine in it.
Really?
Yeah, and a couple of other things in that movie that it seems like Lazar, possibly could have seen those things in a movie.
Yeah, like I have no real reading on it. Obviously, I want to believe. That's my baseline. Is I want to believe. But I don't know. He seems every time he talks, he seems pretty like nervous, or he seems pretty like
Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
He's got
like he seems very stressed when he talks.
Yeah,
Always very stressed.
yeah.
Like stressed and almost like annoyed.
I mean, the whole thing is like, oh well, he's claimed he went to MIT, and there's no record of him there. Well, it shouldn't be on other people to prove a negative. Like he doesn't have like a photo lying around of him.
Yeah. And he
Hanging out
claims that he doesn't make money from it. So what was the point?
I don't know. But just because, there's no motive, I mean, maybe fame, like, I don't know, like who knows what motivates people, but in terms of just like evidence of, and it's like, oh, well, there is proof of him working at the Los Alamos or whatever. Okay, maybe there is, but that doesn't mean that he worked on a UFO at S4 or whatever, like just because one part of his story checks out doesn't mean the whole thing is true, right?
Yeah.
And furthermore, like, why can't he didn't keep any transcripts? Like, he's becoming an engineer with his background and he didn't keep one transcript or one photo or one anything. Like, it's just, That to me is like a massive red flag with, and it's pretty crazy what he's saying. Like you know, to accept all of that. What's he saying? He's saying that like he reverse engineered UFOs and discovered an element called element 115.
Yeah.
And that's what they use to zip around.
Something like that. Like
then he saw a little being.
But I think he retracted
that. Then he retracted that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm just entertained by this all. That's why I love conspiracies or I love fringe stuff, because to me, it's fiction. It's just fun fiction that I like to watch. I don't really take too much credence into it. I just
it's like fan fiction. And
that's how I see it.
And that's great. And if people are as intellectually honest as you are about it, then good for them. You know, like it is a legit, it's like a weird kind of like new other form of entertaining yourself that's kind of half based in reality and half not. But you know, a lot of people just live and die by these.
And that's
on either side. You know,
of course. Like to say that none of this exists absolutely is just as insane, right? Because
exactly.
Because we don't know.
Yeah.
We're just a young species that's learning and evolving, and will probably be cybernetic soon enough.
Yeah.
Which is fun to think about. I love thinking about this stuff.
I mean, maybe the UFOs are some kind of manifestation of like a really advanced artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, now when you said they, like I said, we think like they're out to get us, that they want to set up the new world order. They, and you ask they, like imagine they is not the government, and maybe it's just like the consciousness cloud that we're all uploading to, and that's just guiding us. That's a feedback loop of everything that we do, because everything that we build in technology is like the same as how the structure of natural evolution functions. The way our systems work, the way our cars work, or the way we work. You know, you put fuel in, there's like the crap comes out of the back. You know, everything is the same. Everything is almost there's a beautiful word in mathematics to discuss like something that's made of smaller pieces of the same thing. Fractal.
Yeah.
So like everything is fractal. Everything. And so for me, I don't have any attachment to any outcome or any reality. I just have so much fun looking at everything and trying to piece it together and seeing some similarities and creating my own fun little universe. Because you know, I want to write comic books and make fiction books and
are you working towards that?
Yeah, totally. Cool. I want to make this.
What kind of?
Well, you ever see the feed that I do on? It's in my stories on Instagram.
The feed, with like Leslie Nielsen and.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Who are the main characters?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay, he's like the
Jean-Luc Picard.
Okay.
Susie Q, which is a like a dominatrix, like 50s
diner waitress. Yeah,
with an agenda. The Borg.
Okay, the Borg is from Star Trek.
Star Trek, okay. Yeah, and they operate. They're a race that is like essentially a future version of us that has all become cybernetic, and they're a hive, and they all function. They're all connected, and they just digest other ecosystems and make them
the Borg.
Yeah, the Borg like will go into a planet or a solar system or whatever it is, and just like terraform it and make them all cybernetic, and they become part of the collective, and that's how they keep increasing their
okay. So they're like the antagonists in this universe.
Yes, they're universal
this pop culture universe you've created.
Exactly, and so essentially they're just like a big company that just acquires other companies.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the Borg.
But then there's like secondary.
Yeah, like Norm is a secondary guy who's always uplifting. There's Herman Munster.
Yeah,
who's a version of young Donnie Dekius. My brother's in there, who's usually telling me that what I'm doing.
He's your manager.
Yeah, he's like my shady manager who tells me that I'm not that I'm doing things that are ridiculous, that are not helping my brand, and I'm only going to be losing followers. So that's the kind of stuff. So it's like. It's almost like an introspective thing where it's like these all represent my different voices in my head, and they're all going on simultaneously, and I just dress them up as usually in pop culture characters. So I don't know exactly what the format's going to be, but now that I'm building this fifth dimension and the Galactic Federation of Time Travelers, like it could be a fictional thing. And something that I do is oftentimes I've heard that people don't know when I'm kidding or when I'm serious. Like I kind of like skate in the middle all the time, and I would just lean into that.
Yeah. Like Norm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that character, that Bob Dylan character that he created. Like, is MISCHO the fifth dimension guy?
Yeah.
Is he a real guy? Is he a kook?
Yeah. Yeah, you play with that. Have fun with it.
Yeah,
you know,
and I just want to have fun. Like, I don't want to make a book on how to be healthier because I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm too lazy to like
read 180 scientific
and even,
peer review.
And even the people who do read 180 peer reviewed journals or articles, they have different views than other people who read a different 180 ones. You know, like, why would I want to get in that mess?
Exactly.
I'd rather make a fucking comic book or a fun book that makes the viewer interact with it.
Yeah, not to sound patronizing, but I think that could be good. Like, I think for like younger, you know, like teens and stuff would be interested in some sort of universe like that, you know?
Yeah, where they're like perhaps pop culture.
Because it seems like the fans of your music, don't you have like in the Ukraine?
Well, at the beginning it was Ukraine, and I didn't know why. It was because like I just let like the ads go on like the cheapest. And it just optimized for Ukraine. But I've realized since then that like I have fans in the States and in South America. South America is big.
What's the age range?
16 to 24.
16 to 24. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like who would be into a graphic novel or
totally
comic book or whatever.
Exactly.
So and
I'm just going to build on that because like it's fun. It's consistent. I talked about this in my podcast in the last podcast was the idea of compounding interest. Like, let's say I release a new song. And every time the new song has a different look or sound or aesthetic or visuals, and it's different every time, I feel like I'm starting from scratch every time. Whereas if I have this brand and this tracksuit, maybe the colors will change. Maybe there'll be new characters introduced, but it's compounding on itself and building a certain momentum, you know?
Yeah.
Like
the main factor with compound interest is time though, right? So that's really the thing that you have to really commit to this and allow it to unfold over it's 5 years.
Honestly, it's all long game stuff. This podcast is long game. My music, touring, the books, whatever it is. I just want to be consistently putting out stuff that is in the same realm or like a familiar realm. Because this fifth dimension stuff could be a graphic novel. It could be an album. It could be this podcast. It could be whatever, right? As long as I'm just consistently doing it, who knows where it's going to lead? Who knows who I'm going to call or who's going to come on the podcast or what tour I might get on? Who knows? But all I know is that if I just keep going in a way that's sustainable, that's fun, that feels good, I can't really see much further than that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, exactly. So why get caught up in that? But you're committed to this for a long time. Like,
well, because it really, I only just put this out, like the visuals of it, I only put it out in the last 8 months.
Yeah. Because there was Omic.
Yeah, but the problem with Omic was, first of all, I didn't know I was going to make music again for real. I just went to the studio, met these producers, started recording songs, and I just put it under this thing called Omic. Because Omic was a name or a saying that my brother would say. Would be walking down the street and a pretty girl would walk by, and my brother would go, "Oh, Mick," and like look at me, and she would turn around and I'd be all red because he'd make me laugh. And so I just said, okay, let's call the project Omic as a placeholder. But the more books I read about branding, and the more, because I love reading stuff. Like when I stopped getting drunk, I just started reading. So I guess I changed my my poison. I picked a better poison. And the music, I was writing, good songs, but the problem was that my true personality was not shining through. I just look like a standard, black jean jacket wearing dude with a white t-shirt and a backwards hat. And this whole introspective thought process, the whole questioning reality and trying to see what we all have in common, all that stuff is my real self. Like when I'm in the studio with my producers, this is what we talk about. This is for years and years and years. So I just put a wrapping on my music or on my products that I make that just have this sheen that represents what I'm about. And so it's easier for people who are in the vibe to identify with it. Like someone who likes the Power Rangers and maybe likes Weezer, I'll stand out to them sooner. Like they'll get what I'm about sooner than if I just look like a run-of-the-mill standard guy. It just saves a lot of steps. It saves a lot of explaining. And people who are not interested in this at all will never even waste their time.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like they're going to start maybe listening to my music if it works. And then I start talking about this shit. They're like, this guy's fucking nuts. Fuck that shit. Because right out of the gate, I'm saying this is who I am.
Yeah.
And it just, in terms of branding, you're best to say who you are and be bold about it, because that's what the greats did. That's what Kiss did. That's what Maiden did. That's what...
Well, they created personas, yeah.
They created personas, and they were...
It's not really who they are. It's like this insane, like, exaggeration of part of who they are, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it stemmed from something, and they created something that pierces through.
That just makes sense.
It makes sense that they have fun leaning
The same way
into.
the little guy from Twin Peaks makes sense, as bizarre as it is, you know, like there's and like Kiss. I mean, I hate Kiss, but like you have to respect their, you know, what they've done on, you know, the trademarking and copywriting and, you know, the brand that they built. You know, even just the font is pretty cool. You know, like they really,
it's iconic now. Even like AC/DC and Metallica. You know how many T-shirts they sell at like H&M?
Yeah, James Hetfield designed the logo. He studied graphic design in like
Really?
university, in like some like community college or something, and he designed the, you know, like the like iconic like 3D Master of Puppets
It's amazing.
Metallica logo, yeah, which is so, it's such a cool logo.
It's such an amazing logo, and now people wear that T-shirt every day who don't know what Metallica is.
Oh, it's transcended metal, obviously. It's been
Exactly.
20 years, yeah.
And that was kind of in the background of my mind too, because I come from a business background. I get excited about building products, about selling stuff, like
Physical things.
I really like that. So I build this logo, I build this thing. Is that merch one day and toys and whatever? Who knows? Is it T-shirts that? Because like I explained to you the deep meaning of that logo. But if that logo is just on a T-shirt and looks cool, and some kid wants to buy them all, you think I care?
Yeah, because of shit. Yeah.
Who give? Wow. Oh, I think that's a dog in the hallway.
Wow, this mic picks up everything.
Yeah, well, the walls are paper thin here. So as soon as we get our first our smoke show check, you know, from all the orders that are coming in, then I'll be able to insulate the walls a little better.
We're both just waiting on that check.
Yeah, we're both just waiting, but it's looking good. Best year ever.
Dave Rose, let's go.
Dave Rose, away, let's go.
Jared too, away.
Yeah. So how first of all, you're a fantastic guitar player. And when I say fantastic, you are a shredder. You've got feel. You got soul. No, you're amazing.
I'm not a shredder though. I never like, you know. Done,
Oh,
like
you can
the
shred.
Ingame.
No, not Ingve. So maybe you're not what's it? Gilbert, Tom Gilbert, or
What's his name? Paul Gilbert.
Paul Gilbert. Okay, maybe you're not Paul Gilbert.
No,
but you have feel. You have soul. Like you can like Slash kind of stuff. Like Slash. Like is that more
pentatonic? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I used to hear legends of you before I met you. I'm not kidding. Years before I met you, there was this guy named John LeBerge that I played hockey with for years. And he'd come over sometimes, you know, with the other hockey friends, and I'd be playing some power chords, you know, playing some Green Day, some real unimpressive stuff. And he'd say, "Oh, man, there's this guy. His name is Nick Rosé, and he's fucking amazing, bro. Yo, he can shred solos." I know shred is, to a guitar player, it means something different to a 14-year-old John LeBerge.
Yeah.
But this guy's just fucking amazing. Like, one day you got to meet him. And for years, I was hearing about this motherfucker named Nick Rosé, that every time I picked up a guitar, someone had to tell me about Nick Rosé. And then boom, I met Nick Rosé. It was in the cards.
Put him on bass.
And I put him on bass. Teach him what he's all about.
That's crazy. I didn't know that John LeBerge, you knew John.
Yeah.
It's Wick. Was he at Wick? No, he was at my school.
Hockey.
Yeah, hockey. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, he was a defenseman. And we played on the same hockey teams for like years.
Yeah.
For like at least 5-6 years.
You live near Aurel's place.
Yeah. Yeah, on Monte Vista?
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
Or no. Well, I don't know if we should say the names, but but no, I because I used to have a girlfriend that lived next door to him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was her name?
Jessie.
Okay, well, I feel like we shouldn't get too much into
Yeah, what's her address?
But yeah, no, and then it was Mike Mangione who at Abbott, you had a class with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he had this weird Palm Pilot. He was playing these crazy elaborate games.
So you're like, I gotta meet this Nick Rosé guy.
Oh yeah, and you
this
become
gunslinger.
friends. And you know, when you go to a new school and you don't fucking know anyone, the guy in class that you sit next to, you'll go sit next to him in the cafeteria, and that's probably where I met you.
Yeah.
He probably wasn't on a mission to introduce us, but it just happened.
Yeah, it just happened. I was like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is really cool that it's, you know, I'm here now,
I know.
driving that fucking tank.
Your car is amazing.
My
1988 560 SEL Mercedes.
Papu's car.
Papu is grandfather in Greek.
And Misha's grandfather had this car, Saddam Hussein's car, basically. And it was bequeathed upon me by the Menares brothers.
Yeah, and it was bequeathed upon me when my grandfather passed away, I guess in '08, my dad got it. Then when my dad passed away, I got it. And then I sold it to you.
Yeah. And I try every day to honor Papu. It was in the shop recently. I was driving the other day. I was like on the highway, and there was smoke. But the cabin was filling up with smoke, and not like vapors, like thick. Like I couldn't breathe. I had to put the windows down. What happened? The gaskets were so dry because I think it sat for a little while, right? It didn't move.
It sat for years.
It sat for years, yeah. So that dried out. I got the tires changed. It dried out the gaskets. The mechanic told me it was just like breaking in his hand, like it was
because they need fluid to remain moist.
Exactly. When a car sits, whatever.
Everything dries up and craps out.
Sometimes it's such a cool fucking car, and
it's very LA.
Is it? Yeah.
No, not the car, but you in the car is very LA because I noticed that in LA, a lot of people are characters and they have a uniform, they have an outfit, and their car matches. And
shout
you
out
see
to
this.
Becky Hearn. Becky Hearn's got a cool Mercedes.
Oh yeah, very very cool. Like a 50s, 60s one.
70s.
Very cool.
Yeah, like the generation before.
Nice,
ours.
but that they look significantly more old school, right?
Oh yeah. Because it still looks like they're doing something 80s modern with the 560. It's like what a German guy in the 80s thought looked cool and modern.
Yeah,
It's such a cool car.
very Soviet looking.
Yeah, I know. It's
whatever
kinda,
that means.
Well, no, it's like a brutalist kind of design where it's like just very straight lines and everything's very functional and sturdy and hard and it drives. And now it's back on the road. It's in storage now, but I got it back on the road. It was driving beautifully and sometimes I walk back to my car. Sometimes and I forget like that I have this car.
Every time I see it, because sometimes I see it in the parking lot at this building, or I'll see it around St. Henry or whatever, and I'm like, wow. That thing has a presence. And that's the trade-off of driving a 30-plus-year-old car.
Yeah.
Right? Is that you're going to have to...
Yeah.
There's going to be some love.
Yeah, exactly.
That's required to keep that baby going.
But even that is kind of fun. You meet all these crazy mechanic types. The super the guy who fixed the car's Lebanese guy. He had
his name Mike?
His name, his name is Jean-Georges.
Oh, and that's an epic name.
I walked into his office and he had his feet up on the desk like this, and he was smoking a cigarette inside the office where there's all these fluid, explosive fluids. But he didn't really care, and he did a really really good job. So he's my
like a mechanic shop there.
Yeah.
What mechanic didn't smoke to 5 years ago?
Yeah,
like in the shop.
Like he's gonna change that habit because the law changed. The guy came over from Lebanon. It's a cult. It's a place where people smoke a lot, and he's gonna come to my office, and he was just so I lit one up too. But so you meet all these weird characters. Well, when you not weird, like all these cool characters.
They're characters.
Yeah.
Straight out of a movie.
And that's what's fun about it breaks down, but you learn about cars too. You learn about certain things. And I mean, I'm lucky that, the Mercedes back then were so well built and it's such a sturdy, reliable car that, it's a minimal amount. It's not like I'm, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. It's, it's usually pretty minimal stuff, but, the guy
keeps you on your toes.
It does.
It keeps you honest.
It's good. It's good to be on your toes. You're driving. You're more alert. It's just
you're like, the blowout valve is rusted.
Yeah,
I can feel it.
Yeah,
or whatever the fuck.
You have to be kind of tuned into that, because if you're on the highway, and things feeling a little off, it's good to. It just heightens everything, which is cool. But it's sometimes I walk back to my car. I'm like, holy shit, that's my fucking car.
It's so fucking cool.
Yeah. It's beyond cool. So, it's just a real gift.
And it was the star of the music video, The Machine.
Yes,
where you were the star, but the car was the star.
The car was the real star. Yeah,
there was a lot of smoke in that car.
I was the prop. The car was the star. Yeah, I smoked like 85 cigarettes that day. It was crazy.
Yeah,
but it's pretty cool. You 5 pound put together a pretty cool video.
Amazing.
And,
it's an amazing music video. It's called The Machine. It was so much fun to do, and the machine was the analogy of of this that I'm talking about, because the thing was, you were driving, kind of like Satan driving the car, and I was trapped in the back seat, right? Hallucinating or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's the analogy or the metaphor of being the passenger in your own car, or like your Uncle Bob says, the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
So it's always connected to that world. But see, that was Mick back then. And it's almost, there's so many layers of metaphor that you don't really know. So I'm just being more upfront about it.
Yeah. But that was a lot of fun recording that video.
So there was a lot of cigarette smoke that day.
I gotta ask you, because your dad and your grandfather had all these. There's a pretty impressive stable.
Yeah.
The one I always, there's all these hyper exotics. I always thought the coolest one, because I'm a hipster fuckface, was the Mercedes. The '88. But there was also like
The F40.
That's what I wanted. What's it like driving a Ferrari F40?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It was very stressful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was stressful because
there's no traction control on an F40, right?
No, and the sheer value of it. The value, if something happens, like, you'll be heartbroken because it's a museum piece. You shouldn't be driving that on the road. It ripped. It didn't honestly feel that fast.
Really?
No.
Did you, and like?
But I didn't really rip it.
Because it's like a 2.7. It wasn't a big engine, right? It was like a turbocharged. It was under 3 liters.
Yeah, is it a turbocharged V6? I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know how many. I think it was a 2.7 liter V8, if I'm not mistaken. A small V8, but like,
yeah, it was definitely not a V6.
I mean, you bring it on the roads in Quebec, like, it must have been.
Yeah, I never drove it far. I literally just drove it around the old warehouse. Like on the service road, on the highway a little bit. I never really drove it.
It's like too precious.
It's too precious, man. It was.
It even had the chromed out fire extinguisher in the middle.
Yeah,
I remember sitting in it because your dad had it in the office.
In his office.
In it, he had that, and I can't remember the other car, but he had like 2 Ferraris in the office, which was like,
he was living his dream, man.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, that was such a cool office because at one point he had 5 cars in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
It looked like his desk. Like,
and his desk. It looked like a. It looked like the exotic used car salesman's office that you would go to in like Scarborough, Ontario. Like that's what it looked like. Like if you walked into the building and you went into his office, you thought he sold cars.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it was always like super tight inventory. Everything's in the room. And then you go in the back and we're making garage door openers. Like, what the fuck?
But that's how you get the cars in the office, is with the garage door openers. So it was coherent.
It all made sense.
Yeah,
it all worked. It was very
linear.
Very motor, There were motors on everything. There were a lot of motors.
Did you have a favorite one from that era of like I think there's a Di Tommaso Like, were there any of those that you thought was like the coolest one?
I always loved the 96 Porsche Turbo. That was a classic car.
The 993?
Yeah, 993. Yeah. Oftentimes people say, oh yeah, it was like the Bad Boys one. And I say, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
The Bad Boys one was earlier model.
Yeah.
It was
like a 964.
Yeah, it was a 93 or 94 turbo.
Yeah.
But the 996 turbo was 993 turbo was the first smoothed out looking futuristic car. And that was the same era that the F355 Ferrari came out. Never had, my dad never had one of those, but I always loved that car, and one day I will get it. That's the car that's in the Rock.
Yeah.
It's in GoldenEye.
Is it in GoldenEye?
Yeah, at the beginning there's a I guess it's kind of a chase / mountain
with the
top.
Russian girl.
Yeah, with the Russian girl, and she's in the red F355 GTS, and he's in the old Aston.
Oh, nice!
And they're just ripping.
Wow.
So I always love those cars, but out of
with the teeth, with the roof.
Yeah,
that's a cool one.
Yeah, and so other cars that are the SL65 Black Series was always cool. I drove that one a lot.
I remember going for you taking me in the turbo once for like a little, and it was crazy fast. It was like pretty old car, but like it had this like analog. It wasn't like digital. A lot of these more modern hypercars, it's just like everything's a computer.
Yeah.
But the 993, just even as a passenger, felt like glunk. Like it was just like
maybe that was my poor shifting, but
that it was just.
But
fast.
No, it had a very mechanical sound to it.
Yeah, and the engine behind, like it felt like it was pushing you forward. Like it was a really.
Yeah, you weren't being pulled.
No,
it's true.
Being pushed. It was a really intense That was a cool car too.
Yeah, so that car was cool. The Testarossa was cool. 512M.
Oh wow, yeah, one of those.
Yeah,
It's
what
cool
else?
that you, because most 99% of people will never have the chance to drive these cars and push it to the limit.
Totally. Yeah, well, I never pushed these cars. I did push the 512M Testarossa.
Really?
It was Grand Prix weekend with my dad, and we all took the cars into the city to do some like little showing. Like there's all the Ferrari club was there and stuff. And we were driving back. We had gotten off DeCarry and we're getting back on the 40. And my brother was in I don't know what he was in, but my dad was in the F40 and I passed my dad in the 512M and I downshifted to really give it and flames came like shooting out of, like just exploded out when I took off and it fucked something up with the car and the exhaust and the engine. Like it was all fucked up after. But it was a hell of a downshift.
Wow.
It was fucking,
flames.
like flames, like
What
3
color-
feet of flames.
What color was it?
Red.
Red, Ferrari red, or
Yeah,
like okay.
Ferrari red.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know yeah.
Is it Rosso Scuderia? Is that the color?
I don't know. I just thought it was called the Ferrari red.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Rosso Scuderia sounds
Yeah,
nicer.
there's Rosso Dino. There's Rosso. I think.
Oh, there's different reds.
Yeah. There's all kinds of Rossos.
All kinds of Rosso.
Come on, bro. I think there's only Ferrari only has one shade of Rosso. Where have you been?
I don't get the pamphlets.
Have you not lived? I feel like you would know the colors.
Yeah, I like
you're
the color
kinda-
like a 064.
Yeah. Or like Modena blue.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
That's the cool thing about guitars is that you learn a lot about different, Lake Placid
Woods.
blue,
Yeah, like-
candy apple red, like
Yeah.
paint colors is it's an interesting.
Yeah, and it's my brother knows all the official paint color names of all kinds of cars.
Wow.
So he knows it makes me laugh because his knowledge of that is very interesting to me and fun. So he'll say, he'll be like, I don't know, it doesn't even come to mind right now, but he'll be like, Aspen Blue. I love that new Aspen Blue, but he knows them all, and it's.
Well, you probably know them too from guitar, right? Because like
yeah, but they're different because
Yeah.
like BMW has their names, Ferrari has their names.
yeah.
Mercedes has their names.
Yeah.
So Candy Apple Red is not just Candy Apple Red.
Yeah.
Like there's no Mercedes with Rosso Dino.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What about Piano Black?
Piano Black.
Have you ever seen?
Yeah, I have.
it's
The
a great-
interior of like a BMW, you can get Piano Black.
Yeah, it's a great color.
And is that a guitar name too?
I think John Mayer's signature, because he's John Mayer, he insisted that it be painted piano black.
So he wanted his guitar to be Piano Black.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah,
I like
the
his
gold hardware.
Yeah. He's an amazing guitar player, huh?
He's so good. If he just
If you just what's your pointers for him?
well, yeah, okay.
What's your
John.
pointers for John Mayer?
Okay, John Mayer. I think if he just focused on the stuff he was doing in a trio he just proved that he was an undeniable guitar player. And then he backed off, which is kind of its own little power move. Like, hey, if I wanted to do this, I could, but you're just getting
Because he does lean into it to his live performances. Like he always adds that sizzle and that flair.
Yeah,
That SRV.
I just feel like there's a lot more there,
Yeah.
But and selfishly, I want to hear more of that.
Of course.
what he has to offer with that.
Maybe that's great that he keeps you wanting more.
Yeah, well, it's smart. I think he's really smart at like his image, like managing his image.
And look, what he is putting out
I
is
saw him do stand up with Dave Chappelle. Like, that was like.
How was that?
It was all right. It's hard to share a stage with Dave Chappelle.
Oh, no shit.
Stand up comedy, but.
Stand-up comedy is hard enough. Then you got to share the
It was
stage.
at the Bell Center too, which is not a good place to see a comedy show.
Especially a young comic. Like
Yeah. And barely,
like a green comic.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, he knows how to perform in front of a lot of people, but when you don't have your guitar to back you up,
It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Like me performing live without a guitar is so fucked.
do you ever like with a
There
band?
was only one song. There was one song on a few shows that
It's like a safety net. The guitar.
yeah, well, it's like my identity. It's part of the thing.
Yeah.
When you see a guy who plays guitar and he removes it when he sings, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's
Or
either,
like watching Mick Jagger and he plays guitar in a song and it just completely changes the whole
it's like, well,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, I get that.
Or when James Hetfield, when he blew up his arm in Montreal and he did the rest of the tour with like just a cast on, and it was weird seeing these guys without that kind of prop.
Yeah, because you're just used to seeing it.
Yeah.
But hey, he burnt his hair, right?
He burnt his whole arm.
Was that at the Guns N' Roses show?
Yeah, at
the Olympic Stadium?
Yeah, because it was like magnesium that blew up, and magnesium burns at like 3,000 degrees.
Where the
like,
fuck was magnesium?
In the fireworks. That's what they used to like
I
blow
don't
up
know
fireworks, and his skin was bubbling. He said, but like 2 days later, I don't think they missed like a single show. Like he had a cast on and he was singing with a cast on. Oh,
Master. I fucking love Metallica. I love how much fun they seem to have when they're playing live.
Yeah,
Like
still.
they don't take themselves too seriously. Like you can argue Lars maybe does, but I don't think so. Like I think they really lean into like they're a metal band, like a thrash metal band, but with punk rock DNA.
Yeah, and songwriting. I mean, they're pretty far removed from like they took it to another place.
Yeah. Well, their later stuff, their more recent stuff is more thrashy.
Yeah, that's true. Death Magnetic was really good.
It's amazing.
I love that album.
Oh, I was in university at that time, and I remember seeing Death Magnetic on like all the bus stops and street signs.
And
like,
what a crazy name for an album, Death Magnetic.
awesome.
What does that mean? You know,
It's up to you to decide, my friend. So rock and roll, you're in a band.
Yeah.
Talk about your band.
Technicolor Dreamers, all the way from LaSalle, Quebec.
I love the name.
Do you?
Technicolor Dreamers is a beautiful name.
It's a mouthful. It's good for SEO though. Like when you search, if you Google Technicolor Dreamers, you get like all of our stuff right away. So that's
oh yeah. Well, if you're Technicolor or just Dreamers, I don't know.
Together.
But I think Technicolor Dreamers is cool. Why have you received?
No, it's like an ongoing. It's always been a conversation within the band of like it's a long name and like I don't know. When I showed up, I was originally a keyboard player.
Tell that to Josh Homme.
Yeah, that's true. It's a mouthful too. That's a good
Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wacky band name when you think about it. Then it just becomes a cool thing. So you stop thinking about the actual name, right? Because it just becomes the music and the shows or whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't really care about the intentionally kind of dumb name.
Yeah, because maybe you think about it too much, but when I see Technicolor Dreamers, I'm like, that's an awesome name.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But yeah, so
how did that come to be? Get a little closer to the mic.
Yeah, so that was about 2 years ago. I never really, we were I think we played like one or two shows at Hudson Community Center basement. But after that, like, I've really focused on school. I never properly, been in a band proper. So Massimo, who works at Clark in Point St. Charles, where I'm at on pretty much on a daily basis, he's in Technicolor Dreamers, and they needed a keyboard player to do like synth stuff. So I said, okay, fine. It's not like my first choice, but let's do that. Let's try it out. So we tried it out. And then eventually I moved over to drums, and
My hostile takeover.
It was a leveraged buyout of the drummer, and it was just
very Dave Grohl of you.
Yeah, it just what was the best thing for the songs, it flowed really, really well. And I love playing drums. It's still not, guitar is my main thing, but drums are funner to play live. They're funner to play in the studio. It's just, and you're like in full control of the tempo and the dynamics. That is really appealing. So once I got on the drums, and it really started happening, and then, Mass is just always pumping out songs. And, for Christmas, we recorded Paul McCartney's Wonderful Christmas Time, which is a wild song.
It's so good.
Have you ever tried to learn like the chord progression?
No, I've never tried to learn it, but it definitely sounds so quirky.
Yeah, it's wild. If you look at it, like at
so in terms of chord progressions, what's weird about it?
It's there's a lot of like major sevenths and like these weird like add 9 jazz chords, but I don't want to get too technical. But like when you look at what the notes that the melody's doing over these chord progressions, it's like fully jazz, like semitone, like the vocal melody is like a semitone off from the actual chord. It's like it's super dissonant, but it's McCartney, so it just works and it sounds super natural. Like it
sounds like a pop song.
Yeah, it sounds like a pop song, but it's pretty far from being a pop song.
But it's pretty advanced
harmonically. Yeah,
advanced
crazy
songwriting, or theoretically, it's advanced.
Yeah, and the arrangement is really weird. It sounds like a jingle almost for like a coffee commercial or something. But that's the genius of Paul McCartney. He makes these kind of more complicated things sound very accessible But the arrangement is really weird too, on top of just the chords being really weird. So
is it easy to play as a unit? Like in terms of groove?
No, it's not, because it's
it's like dun dun dun.
Yeah, exactly. So we had to figure out a way to kind of make it, because I don't think there's any real drums on the track. I think he was experimenting a lot with like synth and Moogs and all that stuff. So it's the drums are like barely there. So, but with, it was a cool opportunity to kind of approach it like full on,
And what does your version feel like?
I'd say it sounds kind of like the Strokes.
So is it more bass, more drums?
Yeah, and the drums are kind of crazy, like
a crazy
lot
Ringo?
of fills. Yeah, the crazy
Did
Ringo.
you lean in? Did you embrace your inner Ringo?
Yeah,
even though he's not part of that, but
my inner Keith Moon, like the
cool.
fills and like the just kind of like, it's a festive kind of song, so it's just kind of.
Okay, so it's going to be released at Christmas?
Yeah, before, like hopefully like a week before Christmas.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So and we're putting an EP together of like original songs, and that's coming together really nicely too. So it's
amazing.
cool. And
when can the world expect that to come out?
I have no idea. I don't know yet when that's going to be. I think in early 2021.
Cool. And I'm always interested on how like people release stuff. So is there a plan? Is it just like a...
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out, because we're realizing just like the stakes involved with like, you put out a single first, you put them all out together. Do you wait and do an LP? And I don't know.
Like, yeah. Because I
don't think anyone knows that. Like, it's just so weird right now to like, get a song out there.
Yeah, because all I know is if it's an album, I just look at what everyone else is doing. Like the Gorillaz just released something, and Damon Albarn was on all the YouTube podcasts or the YouTube shows, or my whole YouTube feed was filled with him. And then when McConaughey released his book, he was on everything as well. So it's like, well, how do you get access to not saying Variety or Joe Rogan, but publicity now is in terms of, it's like getting in front of the right podcast or the right YouTube channel or the right.
And I have no idea.
I'm learning too. Yeah.
And I'm just approaching this the same way I approach everything else, which is, let's see where it goes.
Yeah, do it with it when it gets to it.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't even play shows right now, which sucks, and which is the main revenue stream for most artists anyways. So it's weird. And it's just like putting it out into like a vacuum, like an echo chamber or something. Yeah. It's like, here you go.
So you think this will shift people in terms of, because it's what you're doing, essentially what I'm doing is that I was in a business, I sold it. I have other ventures going on, and my art is something that I don't need to necessarily depend on revenue in the moment. You have other things going on, and you have your band, and it's like maybe music will become not more pure, but people can be releasing music as not as a hobby, but I don't know the point I'm trying to get at here, but it's like you can do multiple things. You can be a journalist. You can be a writer. You can be in a band. You can do all these things, and then you can just see how it goes and where it goes. Whereas before, it's like, I'm only in a band.
Yeah.
Where it's tough for that now. If like the world is closed, there's no touring, there's no this, you can't just be a band if that's your only source of revenue. So you got to get creative. You got to diversify that portfolio of yours. Yeah. So you're diversified. I'm pretty diversified. Yeah. So maybe it's a nice thing that it allows us to not be stressed out about anything or not over.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky where I can make a living, off of the journalism and the writing and all that stuff, and still be creative in other ways. And I'm not making a lot of money, but it's all good. Like, it's not my goal. So and then it just gives all my free time I can put into other, because I'm not working 70 hours a week, and though even the work I do is not 9 to 5, and it's not. It's really enjoyable. It's not even work. So
it's about doing enjoyable things and just
figuring out a way to get paid. Everyone's got to make a buck.
Exactly. And everyone has a different set of circumstances, a different set of skills, a different set of everything.
Yeah.
So
figure out what that is.
So it's up to us to figure out how we fit in the environment and how we can offer the ecosystem something that gives us back something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to just create value, and so people want to pay you for what you like,
for the value that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
That's really it. Yeah. So Technicolor Dreamers. I love that. Do you guys? I see you. How often do you rehearse?
Twice a week.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
That's
You know,
it. That's great.
Yeah, discipline, and we do, like, the good thing with COVID and all the quarantine and all that is that we've been able to practice and focus just on rehearsing. So really, really tightening up as a group and writing a lot of songs and like really like a lot, a lot of songs. So it's all been really good this period. I mean, luckily, again, a lot of people like, can't make money right now, but I'm as a freelancer doing okay, and it's allowed me to just engage in way more like creative things and not distracted by going out, going to restaurants, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot less distractions. I do miss some of them, that's for sure. But for the most part, it keeps me on my game.
Yeah, well, it's like, the 15, 16-year-old in his room with his guitar, like you can forget about that person. But this has kind of forced everyone to reconnect
with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Get them to ask questions that maybe their situation was not making very clear to them.
Yeah, exactly. Because so many people are like, why am I doing this? Like, why did I go to an office from 9 to 5 for so long? Why am I even doing this job? Like, it's just like, it's forcing people to ask like really fundamental questions, which is great.
Yeah, which is always great. So
Yeah.
it's whatever your views on the whole thing is, it's definitely going to be a year of growth because there's so much learning happening.
Well, growth, as long as you still, there's a lot of people struggling to, make ends meet for sure. So, assuming they're not, in survival mode, and there's a lot of people in survival mode.
Yes.
Then yeah, it's an opportunity. If you have the privilege to take a step back and be like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Then it's great, but it's bad out there, man. It's like restaurants and bars and everything. It's been really
It's
rough.
really tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. But even when it's really bad, let's say your restaurant had to close, you have no choice but to start doing something.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing people getting creative and people starting new things that they otherwise wouldn't have started.
Yeah.
So because like I've said this before in other podcasts, but when like we live in a pretty safe place, like let's say our city, our North America, for the most part, your average middle class, whatever, it's pretty safe. You're never gonna really lose anything. You're never really gonna get pushed to the limits. But when something like this happens, it's an opportunity to see what you're made of, and oftentimes you realize that you have a lot more in you than you even knew.
Yeah.
And only when you're presented with a situation where you have to prove yourself for survival, you will thrive.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's the way I like to look at it. And I'm like,
It's a lot of discomfort, but
that's
potential growth. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, I always like to find that silver lining, but yeah, of course, there are some people who are just fucking suffering and there's nothing they can do.
No.
And so not taking anywhere, sending them peace and love and good vibes and hopefully the ecosystem can help them out,
Yeah, exactly.
What else have you learned from this great 2020? This great odd year that is 2020.
It's an odd year. Well, it's important to, make sure everything's in its right place at all times, because if something hits like that, and whether it's financially, personally, or whatever, you want to make sure you're
okay.
You can absorb that kind of unforeseen circumstances, whether it means, being in the right relationships or, work-wise, personally, whatever, because things don't just always go really smoothly. So I've been lucky. I've been like super, super busy lately, but it's because, I've been trying to manage things, since getting sober, it's just so much easier to manage your life and place everything where it needs to be placed and get rid of stuff that you don't need, that it, when unforeseen things do happen, it's not like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Even something as weird as being forced to lock down, So
how's the relationship been handling the lockdown?
Great.
Do you live together?
Yeah. So we live together. And it's like, there's like, when the lockdown's happening, I think a lot of people realize they were dating crazy people, in like March or April, like, oh my God, what have I done? But I wasn't lucky. It was the opposite effect for me. It was just, it was a team and we handled it really well and super supportive. And,
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's
And as a
fantastic.
photographer, like, so, you know, it was tougher on her than it was on me because she's nothing to take pictures of. But
You.
yeah, who wants to? No
I
one's
don't know.
buying
I don't know
that.
if you pay very well,
But it was great. Like, it was actually a positive period. So yeah, I was very lucky. It was throughout all of that with work and with, you know, other stuff. It was good. It was like a positive thing, you know. I reconnected with, you know, my emo 16-year-old, you know, it was like really serious about one thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, Nick Rose.
Yeah.
All right, Nick Rose. I think we're getting to that place, you know.
I really have to pee.
So do I.
So bad.
God damn. So I think we'll wrap this up then.
All right.
So Nick Rose, where can people find you? Where can people find the Technicolor Dreamers?
Technicolor Dreamers on Instagram. I'm on Twitter at Nicolas Chocolat.
Okay.
I don't really post stuff on social media though, but
Okay.
that's where I'm at. And
I'll post some links
there's a
in the
bunch
description.
of Vice articles I wrote if you want to read about UFOs or whatever. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Nick Rose, thank you so much for being on the MISCHO podcast here in
you.
the fifth dimension.
Thank you, Michelle. It's nice here in the fifth dimension.
You're a beautiful soul,
Oh,
and I love you very much.
Oh.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And now that we're plugging stuff, we're going to talk about our greatest sponsor, Smoke Show Sauce.
Yes.
So go to smokeshowsauce.com, promo code MISCHO, MISCHO, and you will get, I think, 15% off, 10 to 15. That's what Dave said. He said 10 to 15. I guess it depends on the week. So you'll get a smokeshowsauce.com. Zadie's Smoked Salmon, go smokesalmonmontreal.com. Promo code MISCHO15.
Salmon Daddy.
Salmon Daddy. Well, you know, I want to rep all the beautiful characters that I know. And this is just, you know, it's fun and games. You know, we're just fucking around here. What else? Well, my name is MISCHO. I'm your host. I make the music. You can find me on Instagram at MISCHO or on YouTube, MISCHO. And Christmas in Space is out now, but when this airs, it'll be probably after Christmas, so it'll probably be useless. But I do have an album coming, or an EP, not sure yet, but that'll be coming in the first quarter of 2021.
You should re-record Going Rogue with guitars and...
Oh yeah, but I don't like those lyrics anymore.
Yeah, they're pretty wild. It was a good song though. Anyways,
Yeah,
I digress.
pre-game, Silver Valley Lodge, call the cab straight to the club, say what up, play our song, blah, 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 blah. Well, all right. Well, on that note, fellow time travelers, it's been a slice. Thank you very much for hanging out. Nick Rose,
Thanks,
you're,
Mish.
you're an absolute beauty. And we're going to, a little outro music, you know, a little spaced out, off the upcoming album that we don't know what it's called yet.